Nope, no worries. Good afternoon and happy holidays, everyone. We'll call to order the Industrial Commission North Dakota with the roll call to confirm if I can see visually. We're all here. So we got it. We'll call that good. We got the full thing. And then the first up is consideration of the November 28th meeting minutes, which were sent out in advance.
So moved as presented.
Second.
And we have motion second as presented. I'm presuming that means there's no additions or corrections.
Correct.
We'll call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General.
Yes.
Governor.
Yes. Motion carries. Is there any other commission business at this time?
No other administrative office business at this time, Governor.
Okay, right. So kicking it off today, North Dakota Housing Finance.
All right, good afternoon. I got an easy job today. I'm just going to turn it over to Mindy and Kayla.
Okay.
All right, I'll be going first. Okay, I'll be going. I'm Mindy Piat, shareholder with Brady Mertz in the audit for both the Housing Finance Agency and Housing Incentive Fund. I believe you have copies of both of the audited financials in your packets. Overall, for Housing Finance Agency, our opinion for our audit report is on page 1. And we expressed an unmodified opinion for a clean opinion, meaning that the financial statements fairly present in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States, commonly referred to as GAAP, or the full accrual basis. Following our audit report is the management's discussion and analysis, which provides details and comparative views. So if you're looking for a comparative side by side and explanations for variances, that's a good place to look. I'll point out just a couple financial highlights on page 13. On page 13 is a statement of revenue expenses and changes in net position. Overall, you can see for fiscal year June 30th, 2023, total revenues were about 65.3 million. And so this is up about 21 million or 47% from the prior year. Similar, you'll see that interest expense increased with the additional bonds that were issued, and so expenses are up. But overall, for the agency, it was a positive increase in net position or residual equity of about 15%.
And the big change there on the investment income from year over year.
Interest change in rates.
Yep.
Big changes, right?
I noticed.
And then we also have another report. It's further back on page 76.
The fee income was flat during that year over year in that time period. Was that, do we have a change in schedule of fees or change in volume, or just is it?
Just kind of, it's a standard, fee income related to different things that we issue within the agency, really. So nothing that would really fluctuate based on the number of bonds.
Okay.
So.
Actually, Mindy.
Okay. Nope, that's fine. I'm just going to point out on page 76, as part of performing our audit, we also are required to conduct it in accordance with government auditing standards. And so with that, we review internal control when we're designing our audit procedures, but we don't give an opinion on internal control. If we became aware of any kind of matters, we'd be required to communicate it in this report. But similar to the financial report, this is an unmodified opinion, no issues as part of the audit. And then there's an additional report on page 78 for conducting the audit in accordance with uniform guidance. So this is a separate audit from the financial audit. It's an audit of the compliance programs. The programs that we looked at this year were the mortgage insurance homes programs, Ginnie Mae, and then housing for lower income families. And based on our testing, we found that the agency was in compliance with all the federal requirements for those programs. So again, it's an unmodified opinion. And then lastly, after this, there's additional comments requested by Legislative Audit and Fiscal Committee, and then another letter of required communications by our professional guidance. All those items are positive, so I won't point out anything in there. So with that, any questions before we move on to the incentive fund?
On how many years has Brady Martz been doing this?
I think housing finance, it's been either 9 years. And then I think this year's audit was the first of a 3-year renewal period, I believe. So every 3 years, it's sent out to bid by the state auditor's office. They coordinate that, the
You
procurement
do it at the
process.
same time each year?
Yep.
And how big is the team and how many, how long does it take you to do the audit?
So I would say we have 2 weeks. So we have 1 week of preliminary field work and then a week of actual audit field work. And probably our team size varies anywhere from probably 3 to 5 people on site. And then after that's all done, we have another team member that prepares the financial statements after the audit. So in total, it's probably, I think, $300, if I remember right.
And what, remind me, at least for these, what's the financial system that the department's using?
It's an internal software. So it's called basically the general ledger is what we use. Pat Nagel, our old CFO, he created it.
So they, and so that's been created over time and is still,
Still operating.
Okay.
We might look at a new ledger system eventually, but that will be in a few years, depending on cost. It's saved us a lot of money to be able to develop it internally.
Mhm.
So, and then our servicing, if you were to talk about the loans, that is called DLS, and Pat had created that as well. Is working on a rewrite so that we don't have to go external to buy that.
Which we had looked at a few years ago in anticipation
Yep.
of having to rewrite it, and it was,
but if Pat's not around to ask questions for and do
Correct.
fixes, does that create some risk?
well, we've, part of our succession planning is we've hired IT.
Yeah.
We have an IT position now, internal, that's working with him. And then we have another person, 2 other people that have been here for a while that work with him too. And then we'll see when he's physically done, which he's going to retire first part of next year, but then he's going to be a temp employee after that and we'll be there to finish up and for questions and that going forward.
Our ledger, though, I would say is fairly non-complex. If
Mm-hmm.
we did have to go out and redo that, the servicing system, DLS, is much more complex.
Yep.
So, and hopefully Mindy
Yeah.
may get our reports and hopefully they're substantial.
Yeah, and I don't know, man, the cost, maybe to talk to, I mean, with IT, if you're working with NDIT, because under the state contract that includes Dynamics, I would think that we're already, we don't have to go through a big process
Sure. Yeah.
to get that, because we're already, I mean, there's a bunch of agencies that are already using that.
Right, yeah.
There's just being add-on.
With to replace the general ledger would be.
Sure.
It's pretty simple.
Yeah, and I've used Microsoft Dynamics before previously, so it's a good system.
Did you have a positive experience?
Yes, we liked the reports, being able to go to Excel, very nice.
Yeah.
So.
I'll second that. Me too. Okay, any more questions on housing
If you
finance?
know anybody that doesn't like it, I've got somebody I can call.
Good to know. Okay, so the next audit is Housing Incentive Fund, similar to Housing Finance Agency. Again, we expressed an unmodified or clean opinion. If you flip to page 9, this shows the activity in the fund for the year. As you'll see, there was no contributions this year to the fund. There were a few project payments that came in from projects that were approved and then ultimately decided not to follow the guidelines of the program. And so they had some repayment there. And then basically just using up the funds that are still in existence. So for 2023, about 7.9 million of the funds were used. And as of June 30th, there was about 7.2 million left to be expended for the purpose of which the fund was set up. This audit, similar to Housing Finance Agency, we also conduct in accordance with government auditing standards. Again, no issues with that, no findings to be reported. And similarly, there's the same letters at the back of the financials, but no issues or areas to bring up of concern. So
And we're saying there was remind me what the legislature appropriated for housing incentive when does that flow in?
For the year you're looking at, that would be part of the 23 biennium, so it was
it came in last year.
9.5 million, which was all committed in 2021. And then, so there's nothing left over except what, some of it hasn't been spent yet on the project because we usually put the HIF dollars in or the last into a project.
Yep.
And then you talked about some repayments. There was a couple projects that, in particular, one in Watford City that owners did not want to, as you said, continue with the eligibility because of the market dynamics. So
Right.
they paid the loan back.
And then was there a new appropriation for this?
For this biennium was 13.75 million.
And when does that deposit actually hit your?
That hit July 1.
Okay, so this is
So it's, yeah,
for that, so that's why there's a, gotcha.
Yeah. The leg.
From a policy standpoint, you'll go through all that 13.75 and quickly. right?
Yeah. We had our first round, we had a report on it last month and we didn't use all the HIF money this go around and that just had to do with how the apps come in and what other funding they got. But yeah, we anticipate the next go around, we'll use it all up.
So it'll be gone in the first 6 to 9 months of the biennium.
Well, not in this biennium, because that started now.
Right.
But by next fall, we'll work the rest of it out to new projects.
Okay, the next round is all the way
It'll be next fall.
next fall.
Yeah.
And she had how much remaining? A little over.
It was like 5 million.
Okay.
Which we thought that was okay with us because that'll help with projects for next year rather than all happening.
That's all I have for the audit. Unless you have
Any other questions for Mindy? Well, Mindy, tell your team thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Yes.
And thank you to Dave and Caleb and their team. They do a great job and make our job pretty. We certainly appreciate the help. So,
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Right, I'm up next for our most recent bond. So we just did 23F, 75 million of tax exempt bonds. We ended up with a yield of 4.81. To date, we've actually got reservations for the full amount, so we're not really worried about the drop in interest rates that we've seen here recently. So everything locked in at a higher rate. We'll get the spread that we can get because obviously we're restricted on the tax exempt side. So we're happy with all the pricing. To date in December right now, we've got 11 million in reservations. Normally for the whole month of December, we would do about 10 million. So we're well ahead. That first time home buyer market is still just going crazy. So we'd like to slow it down a bit, which is why I've kept rates a little bit higher. But we're still at a really good rate, below 6%.
And when you have any sense of what's driving that demand, are these, I mean, it's great because people are putting down their roots and whatever, and this is part of workforce infrastructure to make sure we've got housing, but what's, any sense demographically or what markets or what part of the state that's driving that demand?
It's spread out across the state pretty good. I mean, obviously Bismarck, Fargo areas are the big driver of it. But the other markets are strong for them. I think it's because we have been at least a percentage point or more below the market. And I think that's, lenders are out there beating the bushes for customers and so are realtors. And I think knowing that our rates are that low, that helps people qualify. Like that's saving people on an average purchase price, a couple $100 a month in paid.
Then when these go out, if interest rates drop, do they have the ability to refinance?
Yes.
So then that's part of the pitch, which is, jump in now, rates are falling and.
I would say there's a little bit of fear out there too. People don't know if rates are going to go up. Right now, I would say they aren't. There's a lot out there that says the housing market could have a little softening going into 24. So yet to be seen. But it's surprising to us too. I mean, I would expect by now for things to slow down, but we didn't get snow. That also keeps the market busy. People are out shopping still. So.
Yeah, and
They're buying houses instead of snow blowers.
That's
Yeah,
right.
exactly. Or just busy.
They can
shoveling.
get to the house. Yeah.
So anyway, I just think the house prices have probably stabilized also, which has helped people make that decision.
Yep.
Why, so.
So Any questions, anything else on that?
Well, good news on the bond sale.
Yeah.
Yields and pricing. Way to go.
We're happy with it, so we have a good team, right? All right, so for the next thing, it's the consideration of our 2024 general authorizing resolution. So before you, you've got our 2024 annual resolution. This allows the agency to issue up to 450 million collectively between our tax exempt and taxable bonds. The annual authorization here allows us to not have to come back and get your guys' approval before each bond sale. So if there's no questions, I would ask for your guys' approval.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and second on the motion. Is it on attachment 4? Any other questions or comments? Call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General,
Yes.
Governor.
Yes, motion carries.
All right, so the next thing I've got here is our Gina May authorization form 11702. So this basically just authorizes the designated housing finance employees that are listed to conduct business with Jeannie Mae, who is one of our loan providers. So the agency has to recertify this annually. If we don't have any changes, we don't have to come for your guys' approval. This year, we do have changes. We had to remove Carlene and add Karen. And then we also removed a retired member of our team, Randy Nelson, and added Christine Hard. So unless there's any questions on this form, we're just asking for your approval.
So moved.
Not so fast.
Sometimes I'm not sure who's so diabolical.
I don't know. She smiles a
The
lot.
one,
She's up to
the one
something.
that we're approving will actually have signatures on it. though.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah.
Karen-
Here it
Karen's got it.
is. That's right.
Call.
I need a second before we.
Yeah, I seconded.
What did you-
I thought about it for a
He
while.
hesitated.
Yeah, we'll call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General.
Yes. Yes, motion carries.
That's all we
Right,
have.
that's all for you.
Great.
Yeah.
Happy
Thank you.
holidays.
Yes, you too.
Thanks, Dave. Kayla. Moving on to Reese, North Dakota Oil and Gas Research Council.
All right, thank you, Governor, Commission members. Presenting your project management and financial report for the Oil and Gas Research Program. Your second page of your report, of course, is the update on where we're at, the Industrial Commission and all of your managed programs. Page 3 showing all of your Industrial Commission managed funds and their various balances. And of course, digging into Oil and Gas Research Fund on page 4, we are showing an uncommitted balance of $1.6 million available in the fund today for committal to new projects. And showing a little over 19 million in outstanding grant commitments, as well as our commitments to the Pipeline Authority and the legislative directed projects. You currently have 25 active projects in the program. And then cumulatively, you've granted $90 million, which has led to a private capital investment in North Dakota of just over $524 million. On the oil and
Say
gas,
Good leverage on the more than 5 to 1.
absolutely.
That'd be the standard for all legislative appropriations.
On the biennium funding for this upcoming biennium, the legislature not only appropriated your continuing appropriation for the Oil and Gas Research Fund, which, as a reminder, of course, is funded 100% by the oil and gas industry through their extraction and production taxes. The legislature also appropriated $3 million in one-time funding from SIF for IPIPE. And of course, a reminder that SIF is also 100% funded by the oil and gas industry through tax formula and through royalty income from state-owned minerals. So it continues to be 100% funded by industry tax dollars. So of your funds, you have the 3 million addition for IPIPE specifically, and you have an additional 3 million that the legislature appropriated for the gas capture program, which is further down on your agenda for consideration. Before you today, you have 2 projects for consideration. And with your legislative appropriation, and your cash balance that you have available for you in the fund, you have enough to cover both. If there are no more questions on the financial report, I can start getting into the projects.
Any other questions for? Great summary. Thank you, Reese. Go ahead on the,
First project before you for consideration is iPipe 3.0. So as a reminder for the commission, you've already funded 2 iterations of iPipe. iPipe is an industry consortium made up of industry partners that come together and use our dollars as matching funds. They fund new and emerging technologies for preventing pipeline leaks. They do it in kind of a Shark Tank style event, so they'll hold competitive grant rounds. Companies will come and pitch their ideas to this consortium. They will, compete for these dollars, and the consortium will usually pick about anywhere between 2 to 4 a year to fund. They will offer up their live operating pipeline assets, so these companies can actually have a live operating asset to try out their technology on. They receive funding to commercialize, and they can kind of work out some of the issues with the new technologies to get them ready for commercialization. Through the first 2 tranches, you have funded $3 million to date through the first 2 tranches, which has led to 145 vetted proposals and 12 selected projects that have been funded in North Dakota for iPipe to date. And of course, that's all matched by industry cash and industry in-kind contributions. In many cases, industry matches more than the 50/50 requirement. So some of the early successes with iPipe, they were focused on remote satellite monitoring. So this one example here in the upper right-hand corner is Satellytics. They use hyperspectral data from satellite imagery to detect pipeline leaks. They can detect hydrocarbons, they can detect produced water. They can also monitor water quality. And thanks to the work of the Industrial Commission and iPipe, they were able to kind of develop their algorithm. They use Airbus data from Airbus satellites. They've tested this in North Dakota and determined that it can detect pipeline leaks underneath snow cover. It can detect down to a volume of about 5 gallons. They've tested it with various tests that they've done in the field. They've put 5-gallon buckets out in the field to see if it would detect that. They've tested with different weather conditions. They've also learned that it can be used to detect naturally occurring sediment loading in water bodies. That was an unexpected learning that they found.
see that last one?
Unexpected learnings were, like nutrient loading in water, things like that. There was one case where there was a refinery that was being blamed for nutrient loading in water. They used Satellytics, and they determined that it was not, in fact, from the refinery. It was from failed septic systems from cabins along the lake.
Yep.
So another piece to that is Orbital Sidekick, which iPipe has funded launching a new satellite. So, the goal is that Orbital Sidekick will continue the work of Satellytics and be able to reduce some of the costs for doing this type of work. And then as it continued on, iPipe has continued, of course, to diversify their vetted projects as well. A common example you see in the upper left-hand corner is Ingu Solutions. This is a small golf ball sized sensor that can be put into a live operating pipeline. It acoustically listens to the pipeline, and then you can determine where you may need some maintenance on the pipeline, where you may have a weakness in a weld or something along those lines. Seismos has continued that work with further acoustic monitoring of pipelines to detect leaks and to monitor the health of the pipelines. Flow State is looking into machine learning and AI to eliminate false positives. So if you have a human being monitoring alarms, you get a phenomenon known as alarm fatigue, where there may be so many false alarms that it starts to kind of lose its impact. But Flow State is intended to use machine learning to kind of weed out those false alarms and focus the humans on what really is an alarm and what isn't. And then Direct C, the other example down here, they're looking into smart sensors, smart paint to be able to install on existing pipelines. If there were a leak of hydrocarbons or anything that were in that pipeline, it would be an immediate sensor that would notify the operator.
The sensor's actually in the paint. You put the paint over where the welds are, the seams are.
And iPipe has gotten national attention. If you recall, in 2019, the Industrial Commission and iPipe won the IOGCC Chairman's Award. So IOGCC is the National Organization of Oil and Gas Producing States. So that organization determined that this project deserved a nationwide award. It's received awards through API. It's received attention from out of state. I know Texas had expressed a lot of interest in what we were doing with iPipe, wanting to do something similar in Texas. Was also interested in even joining iPipe, joining with us. So it definitely has a lot of attention nationwide. So iPipe 3.0.
So I got a question before you move on. So it shows that it'll detect leaks and buildups. Will it have the ability, or does it have the ability to look at material integrity or rust or other issues within the pipe itself?
I know that was one of the goals when they were developing it, that it would have that capability.
Okay, that'd be great. You pretty much got it covered at that point.
So the project before you today would be to continue this work. Of course, it would be iPipe 3.0, an additional $3 million. This is what the legislature had appropriated directly for SIF for you to use for this project. And they're looking to, really advance the work of iPipe, and an additional area that they're looking to expand upon is methane monitoring. If iPipe could also be used for methane in addition to the traditional crude and produced water that they had been. But you have a unanimous recommendation from your Oil and Gas Research Council to fund.
So move.
Motion and second. Call for the vote.
Commissioner?
Yes.
Commissioner General?
Yes.
Governor?
Yes.
All right, and your next project before you for consideration is an amendment request. This will further your investment in deep hatch and methane leak detection. So this is a project that you had originally approved back in 2022. It's looking to improve upon designs of deep hatches, which are, the kind of portals, if you will, on top of an oil and gas tank. And they're looking to improve the design to eliminate methane leaks, as well as integrating well site monitoring, integrating wireless monitoring into the deep hatch. So if there were ever a detection of methane, that it would immediately notify the operator so they could remedy it. While they were working through the Underwriter Laboratories process, they ran into a few delays, but they are working through getting this technology underwritten for safety specs and engineering specs. So they did request a 6-month extension for that, but they also requested $170,000 for additional funding, and that would allow them to continue the underwriting process and to add a pilot project installation where they could actually ground truth this thing in North Dakota oil fields. You have unanimous recommendation from the Oil and Gas Research Council to fund.
Move.
Second.
Motion and second. I would just say this takes on even more importance now than when we first approved it the first time around, given the Biden administration's recent announcement at COP about their full-on attack on methane. So this is an example of innovation versus regulation. They're pursuing regulation, we're pursuing innovation. Call for the vote.
Commissioner?
Yes.
Attorney General?
Yes.
Governor?
Yes. Motion carries.
Someday it'd be nice if they actually hired some scientists and figured out what happens to methane after 8 years. Just converts back to water and CO2. Just don't put facts on the table.
Confuse anybody with that.
And related to methane, your attachment 9 for your consideration, another example of innovation. The legislature approved $3 million this last biennium for us to implement a new gas capture and emissions reduction program. So you recall in previous biennia, this had been a tax incentive that it was pretty difficult for the tax department to actually implement. So this biennium, the legislature instead converted it into an incentive program through the Industrial Commission. So it's to fund the installation of projects which would capture gas that would have otherwise been flared. Attachment 9 before you is the recommendation from your Oil and Gas Research Council to implement the policies to implement the program. It would follow your existing Oil and Gas Research Council process. Applicants would apply through the council, demonstrate the work that they've completed to capture the gas, and the council would vote to make recommendations to you for funding. The council is also recommending that they put together a work group to develop a scoring methodology to prioritize areas where there may be fields that struggle with flaring, or prioritize wells which may be marginal, which may have the highest return on investment for investing these dollars into.
So move.
Second. Question, Reese, so with the expectation for the commission that we would see, private sector matches along with these grants similar to what we're seeing in iPipe, similar to other things, but this would be applied, really moving this towards an innovation development and pilot testing for flare capture.
That's correct, Governor. There would be, you would follow your existing policy for requiring a minimum of a 50/50 match, and it would be a reimbursable expense. So they would have to do the work and demonstrate that the work had been done before they would get the reimbursement.
Great, thank you. We'll call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General,
Yes.
Governor.
Yes. Motion carries. That concludes oil and gas. Any other business there, Reese?
No, that's it for oil and gas.
Okay, all right. So DMR,
Governor, as we transition to DMR, I just want to mention that Aaron Steig is with us virtually, and Reese mentioned at our last meeting that Aaron, or maybe it was at a different meeting, but that Aaron was the latest addition to our team. She is our grant program administrative assistant, joining us from Williston today.
welcome, Aaron. Good to have you on the team.
Welcome.
Ed, Clint.
Commissioners, we're going to begin with the Geological Survey's quarterly report, and paleontology is the star for this quarterly report. So I'll turn it over to Ed.
Okay.
I'll keep mine sweet.
You don't need to. This is the part we like.
Yeah. We'll keep it short.
Right.
Ed and I like to bring paleontology to prove we're not fossils.
Okay, if you turn to the graph on page 1, third quarter, scientists from DMR, EERC, graduate students at UAD looked at just under 13,000 cubic core in third quarter. We photographed a bit over 6,100 feet of core, generated 9,100 photographs from the subscription site. So altogether, we pulled almost 19,000 feet of core off the shelves. And then
One question on, I know we always report this way, but do you track, I mean, we record it by feet, which is a good way to measure, but do you guys have a heat map of, or is it public or non-public information of where the core is being, like, where's industry driving their curiosity? What fields, what counties, what thing, or is that considered aggregate data public, or is aggregate data confidential?
well, it's not confidential, but we track it internally, but companies don't like other companies knowing what they're looking at. So we don't publicize that.
You don't like throw it out there on show the heat map.
We found, like I say, companies would like to know what other companies are doing, but they don't want those companies to know what they're doing. So that's kind of the balance that we found.
Potential lease acres may be impacted too.
Actually, I mean, Governor, it would be a great way to increase the amount of core companies are looking at, because they would have us pull a bunch of core and try to throw somebody off of what they're actually interested in. So,
Good, like false flag kind of approach.
so the photograph on
How many I think, what do we have, 23 oil and gas producing counties? North Dakota, or
Right now, 18.
18, we have 18. Is there, have we ever had core pulled from counties that aren't oil and gas producing?
We certainly have core from those counties. And sometimes they're, in more recent times, they've been taken for science other than oil and gas,
Salt caverns or other?
and for CO2 storage.
Yeah, gotcha.
Okay, so the photograph shows the chair of the Department of Geology.
But in your inventory that you have would probably match, the inventory of core that you have on hand would match where the oil industry has been primarily, meaning like McKenzie County would have the most amount of core probably in your library. Is that it?
Yeah.
It was kind of, if you were going to go feet per county, it would probably match where the production has been.
Sometimes companies purposely step out in core just to make sure that they're within that it doesn't extend beyond where they think the play probably extends.
They're searching for edges.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay, so this is Sven Egenhoff, who's the chair of the Department of Geology, Geological Engineering, with one of his graduate students looking at the DuPro. And what I wanted to point out is he's got 3 graduate students now looking at core. He's got hopefully 2 more coming next semester, which that's even 3 is more than we've had since 2015. In other words, the graduate student back in the late 70s and the 80s, we had 15, 16 students. So the number is quite a bit lower, but that was also the peak for the University of North Dakota for core studies. And so, but he's certainly hoping to keep pushing those numbers up.
You actually had 3 quarters of this year have been extremely good. I mean, compared to any other year. That's a lot.
Yeah, we just haven't, the companies that they're going through, they've been cutting and now bringing in new geologists, and it's a bit of a lag. We'll probably get him coming in now during the first or second quarter of next year.
What was the outlier back in 2020 Q3? On your first graph on core pull? Or was it the?
That was photography.
Was it box photos or what was, it's there that shows in the middle of that blue bar?
Oh, right, that's when we had a big push for those. That's where we, instead of, normally we're photographing about 8-inch sections.
Yep.
There we were doing entire boxes because companies like both. And so we had a big push there were some companies that wanted specific things photographed in boxes, so we did that.
There was some external demand, but that was our work that drove that number up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're going to continue to do that, but we've just really focused on, we're now over 50% of all the cores been photographed in those 8-inch standard photos. We really like to get that done and then go through and do all those box photos.
How do you triage all the requests coming in? You're just first come, first served, they come in and they discuss it with you and
And
you map
we're
out your plan and.
unless we've got something really pressing, we're happy to
Yeah.
drop things and fulfill a need and then go back to.
We've got 3 labs in the new core library, so we're able to accommodate a lot of traffic. Sometimes there's 2 operators there at once, and they really try to be secretive of what they're looking at.
Cover the patches on their shirt. What's the, do they pay a fee of some? There's
No.
nothing.
No, we don't charge. We think that in some places do, but in some states, some Canadian provinces, but money comes back to the state many, many times more if you can get them interested in coming and looking at the core. And pronghorn play is a big one that we've pointed to in the past that we discovered in our core library, which Whiting Oil and Gas promoted back in 2012, I think, for APG core. And we use that to get the core library extension back.
When you photograph either an 8-inch or a full box, if someone's going online on the online activity, they can access all those images for free?
Correct.
And is there, what's missing that would cause them to say, okay, I've looked at it online, now I need to go see it in person? I mean, or is the quality of the photography so good right now that they can do most of their analysis just off the photo?
Well, I'm not sure internally what companies have that they can use off the photographs, but we certainly know that they're high enough quality. They use them in presentations at national meetings because we've seen our own photographs on presentations. What we're hoping is, and one of the things we've talked about in the past is they would come in and they have us pull the entire core. Let's say we pull 300 feet, but it turns out they're really interested in 15, 20 feet. And now with those photographs, they can narrow that down. So they already know. And in some cases, they'll say, can you just sample that interval, send it to us? And then they don't come, but they get the information.
Do we have a way to measure, because pulling core, I think we kind of intuitively said, well, that's an indication of interest. That's a leading indicator of maybe potential investment. Is there a way to track, you guys able to track internally, website visits or photograph downloads, or what's the demand signal in here?
We've tried to do that in the past, and I don't know how far that goes back. You might remember, but I would present that to the commission for a number of years till I found out we were only getting it from ITD. We were only getting a segment of what was being, I think it was the top 12% or something. And so those numbers were not correct. And then we had our IT people looking at that, and they got busy with other things. We haven't gone back. I mean, I got burned by it, so I'm a little nervous to go back and try that again.
On the page, sort of a page view. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, something to think about, because we get more and more online, we could have less and less visits, and then you could actually have less core being pulled, but it may not be an indicator of less interest.
Correct. Yep. Yep. And it might be with Drupal, maybe there's things that we can actually do internally with some of these different websites.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, with that, Clint, I'll turn it over to you.
Afternoon, everybody. So to start off with, page 2, a wrap up of our public fossil digs. We had another very successful year. If you look at the graph on the bottom of page 2, our numbers for 2023, which is the blue bar, are slightly lower than last year because we had a bit of rain issue at Medora that caused us some cancellations that brought our numbers down a little bit. But otherwise, we had a really great season. Lots of interest. As you can see, the red bars show our increasing interest in our email notification list. It's a pretty continuous slope up, beyond what we could ever facilitate year to year. So positive reviews back on everything from people. So we had some good digs. The Bismarck continued really well. We get about 50 to 60 fossil jackets out of there every year. Medora dig, of course, is always a very popular one. And up at our Pemina Gorge site, I got a couple fossils here. Some of our big finds were this pair of feet. So those are from a flightless diving bird called Hesperornis. There's probably 2 species there, which is why they're 2 different sizes. And they were found literally right next to each other, almost like that, kind of washed in against each other. So bird bones are very uncommon in the fossil record to start with because they tend to be hollow and very fragile. So at this site, we tend to get quite a few bird bones. And so in the future, I'm sure this will be an area of study that we focus on to figure out which species we have there. But really beautiful fossils coming out of the gorge. The biggest one being in page 3 in the lower right, you can see our big field jacket we were working on this summer. It's about 5.5 feet by 8 feet and about 35 feet up from the road, which is going to be our biggest problem, is getting it down to the road. We built that jacket. We built a rebar frame, put inside the jacket so it's all stable. We were not able to get it flipped by the end of the season because it was a little bit too heavy for us. And so kind of the first thing we'll do next spring when the snow comes off is get up there, get that flipped, get it down to the road and get it out of there. There's a big 8-foot long fish in there that we're really hoping to get cleaned up and on display somewhere. So that was our big effort for this year. We nearly got there. It was a lot to ask to start with, but we had some really good volunteers that stuck with us.
So we have it on the wall of a bar someplace in North?
Actually, my hope is to get it or a copy of it at the new campground up at the Pembina Gorge State Park up there.
Yeah.
So that's my long-term hope, because it'll take a few years to get it cleaned up, but it's gonna be a nice, gorgeous fish. But we can put copies everywhere. Then you can also see in the lower left on that same page, page 3, it's a little difficult to interpret, but this was from our Dickinson dig site, which we went back to for the first time in 4 years. We kind of let the fossils refresh there. That is a full frog skeleton. It's only about that big. And full skeletons of very small animals are very rare in the fossil record, because you can imagine like a frog falls apart very easily. It's very hard to get buried and fossilized. So there's bones coming out all the way around that piece of rock. So we'll probably send that to get CT scans so we can tell where all the bones are inside to help guide cleaning it up. And it'll probably be the most complete frog of that species that's ever been found. So all of the members of the public that keep coming with us on the fossil digs keep helping us make all these amazing finds.
When the Bismarck dig, is it just the image, or why does the T-Rex tooth look blue?
It is actually, it has kind of a cobalt blue color to it when they're first exposed and the fossils are still kind of wet. But additionally on that one, there's also been a consolidant applied to it, which is giving it a little bit of that white sheen that's on there as the consolidant is drying. So when it's finished being cleaned up, it'll look more like the darker portions of the tooth and less like that lighter area. But they do look different when they first get exposed as opposed to when they've been exposed for a few months and in the lab. So it's kind of like you only get to see that on first discovery and no one gets to see that again after that. It's kind of a special moment.
Is the green card in there meant to help indicate size, or is there?
Yeah, so the green card, I covered over the numbers to not give away our field numbers, but that's actually has a field identification for every fossil. So when we're about to take it out of the ground, we take those little laminated cards, we put them next to it, take a photograph, and then when we make the plaster jacket to take it out, we write that number as well on the jacket. And then later, when we're trying to figure out, well, what's in this jacket, we can go back to the photos and be like, oh, that's what's in there. And it helps our preparators know how they should open that jacket and what they should be looking for inside. So it's not a guessing game every time. So it's part of our inventory system.
Would you say that's 3 or 4 inches long, that tooth, or?
That tooth, yeah, about 4 inches, I would say, on that one, which is a good medium-sized tooth from that site. Moving on to page 4, talking about our chance discovery we participated in last May. Over Memorial Day weekend, we got contacted by the Freedom Mine up in Beulah that operators working overnight. It was like 2 or 3 in the morning, which was an amazing discovery by them at that time of night, as they were removing the overburden. So they're not all the way down by the coal. They're doing the first pass, taking the overlying rock off about 30 to 40 feet of it. They dumped it into a truck, brought it over to their staging area, and then dumped the dump truck out. And as the dirt came out of the back of the dump truck, this 7-foot-long mammoth tusk just plopped right on top of the pile, like all whole, complete, sitting right there. So they stopped work and notified, first off, the BLM and the Historical Society, because they're first points of contact. And then Historical Society notified us. And as a group, the 3 agencies went up there and looked at the area. That's that top photo there on page 4. That's all of us out there at the site where it was discovered. They roped off the talus piles of the material they'd taken out, and they also roped off the area of initial discovery because, of course, they track everything so precisely there. They know exactly where those scoops came from. We were able to get back out there. We recovered some more bones from the pile of rocks and also found bones in place up on the hillside still, about 30 feet below where the original surface used to be. And we got about 20 bones or so from the mammoth itself, and then also some bones from associated animals, like there was some bison in there, maybe some large deer, like maybe a stag moose or something like that, that we still have to clean up. But that mammoth specimen is very likely the most complete mammoth, at least that we're aware of, out of North Dakota. We don't have a lot of well-preserved mammoth remains in North Dakota discovered so far. It's mostly like a tooth here or a bone there. So this was a really important discovery that we got out of this site. And of course, this is the specimen that Colossal Biosciences came over to the Heritage Center in September to look at, to possibly sample as well. And it's very well preserved. I wouldn't doubt if it'll work very well for what they're looking to do. So
the de-extinction of
the de-extinction of the mammoth, yeah. And we're also talking with them about other specimens in our collection from the Ice Age as well that they might be interested in besides mammoth too. So
including the big bison.
Yep, bison latifrons, yep. So this was a really great collaboration. We worked for 12 days out there at the mine. Like they facilitated everything we need in terms of equipment and supplies and everything like that. We never got pushed to finish up or anything like that. They told us however much time we need. That's what we've got. We got a whole crew out there, up to 8 or 9 people some days of our staff and volunteers, and got everything out of there and then moved forward on work out there. So this was just a really great project that we're happy to announce today. And so these Ice Age bones, they're kind of subfossils. They're not fully fossilized, which is why they can still pull DNA and stuff like that out of them. And so they tend to be in waterlogged sediments. Once they're out, they have to be kind of sealed up and allowed to dry slowly. Otherwise, they'll crack and fracture and fall apart if they dry out too quickly. So that's the process that we're starting now. They're all sealed up and we have to get them into like a drying chamber and then very slowly bring the moisture out of them. And then once that's done, that'll take a few months, but then we can start conversations with the mine about how to use these. Are very interested in getting them on display somewhere and also to incorporate them into educational content as well. So that'll be the next stage of this collaboration.
What age do you think this mammoth tusk is?
So it's hard to tell until we do the carbon date. The other older stuff that we've had dated, like the bison latifrons, is around 50,000 years old. The fact that we have bison bones there and mammoth bones, so the mammoth would have went extinct about 10,000 years ago, and the bison weren't here until about 100,000 years ago. So we're somewhere in that 100,000 to 10,000 year range. And until we get the carbon date done, we won't know for certain on the age. But my guess is probably near the middle to older end of that because we were pretty far down in this deposit.
Is it 30 feet below the surface?
30 feet below the surface, yeah. So, and we went back to aerial photographs before the mine was there, and there was no indication of this deposit beforehand. Like you couldn't have gone out there and been like, because it's an old stream channel from when the glaciers were there. And you couldn't have told at that time, like, well, this is where there would be a stream channel. Let's dig down to it and find fossils. This was entirely, unless the mine or some other construction project was happening there, we would never have gotten down to this specimen. So this was a really great collaboration, I think. If we move on to page 5, we continued our work on test excavations at a potential dinosaur state park site. We had a really promising site that we reported on last year at the November meeting. Went out there and did some test digs at what we thought would be the best spot. And then as we dug into the hillside, as you can see some of our volunteers doing, we got completely skunked on that dig, unfortunately. So there's fossils out there. We just haven't found quite the right spot to dig at yet. And so we also had several representatives from State Trust Lands came out with us so that their field people could see what these fossils look like in the ground so that they can help be more eyes on the ground for us in different places. And so next year, in the same location, but probably about 100, 150 yards away, there's another spot with a lot of fossils coming out. We're going to move over there and do a test excavation to see if that's the best place for us to dig at there. So it's still a really great spot, but we're still zeroing in on exactly where the best place would be to have some type of dig going at out there.
It's kind of jarring to see the pickaxe swinging here with the volunteer. Is there any toothbrushes? Are you supposed to take the whole mountain out?
So you can kind of see.
Seriously, that's quite a piece of equipment.
In that image, you can kind of see how the sand changes from a tan to a white towards the bottom. And that white sand at the base of that is where the fossils are concentrated at this site. And so we can come through that higher tan sand faster. And then we switch to the hand tools. You can see in the upper left, they're working a bench with a trowel and a brush and very slowly taking that bench down. It is possible you can run into stuff higher up, but it's a probability thing, right? How much time do you put in versus potential return? So sometimes we do have to use bigger tools so that we can get down to a fossil layer and go through. But we are also watching as we go. And the nice thing about having our own lab staff is, for the most part, if something does get encountered that way, it can be repaired and put back together, as long as we're paying attention to it as we go.
Well, someday when I'm in maybe my 3rd term and you guys finally let me come out there, I've only been asking for that. Let me come out there. I'd like to be able to with this little trowel and a toothbrush.
Yeah, you're welcome to join us anytime you'd
Yeah,
like
I
to.
keep hearing that.
We have
Are you gonna bring your own toothbrush?
I'm gonna bring my own toothbrush. I'm definitely gonna come out there.
They've got an open spot for the pickaxe.
There's
Yeah,
always
it
open spots.
doesn't seem as much fun. Drew, get the dirt off this so that we can do some excavating. Yeah.
The funny part with the pickaxe is it's usually the adults going, I don't want a pickaxe. And the kids are like, yes, give me the pickaxe. And then you're like, I enjoy the enthusiasm, but let's make sure that this kid isn't like injuring people with this
Yeah.
because it can go very quickly. But normally that's who's working the pickaxes is the kids.
It's really something. I'm sure that people are out there having an amazing experience. This.
How many different states and countries did you have volunteers from this year?
This year, we were about 20 states, I think 2 countries, because we had some participants from Canada again this last year, up at the Gorge. So, which is about on average for us. We've done, I think, 46 states total from the US. There's just a couple more that we're missing. I know we're missing Utah, and I think we're missing Vermont. And I forget what the 3rd state is. So there's just some strange little holes. And so I need to start sending out some targeting messaging to people. Just be like, if you're from Utah or Vermont and you want to come on the fossil digs, come help us fill out our map. So
I find out that the Attorney General from any of those places is out there digging for there's gonna be some Nobles Castro. I'm not kidding about this. I was kidding about the last part, but I do want to get.
He will bring his own toothbrush.
Yeah, I'm camping out.
I'm
Gonna
coming.
be up all night.
So then on page 6 is our announcement of our new mosasaur species from the Pembina Gorge. So this was published on October 30th, just in time for Halloween, which was intentional. That was our whole fun with that specimen. But this was a specimen that was first discovered in 2015 by a visitor at the Pembina Gorge State Recreation Area. They had been on a fossil dig before. They were out with their family back out to the gorge, and they were walking by one of the areas where a dig is held at and found a chunk of jawbone laying on the surface. And so they knew what the fossil should look like out there, so they reported it to the park rangers, who then reported it to us, and we were about 2 weeks away from going out there anyways. And so the front piece that's more cleaned off there, that's that original piece that the member of the public found. And so when we went out to the site, we managed to go up there and find the rest of the bone coming out, along with almost the entire rest of the skull and the whole neck and the very front part of the body before there's some bite marks there that looks like something ate the back half of the animal and it was never there. So we worked on that site from
So you're saying
2015.
this chunk was just laying on the ground?
It's laying on the ground. That shale's really soft and it weathers several inches every year while we're not there. And that is always the first thing we do when we go back is we just walk the surface, and there's always fossils out there. Not usually that impressive, but there's always fossils out there on those rocks.
That's awesome.
So we worked that site from 2015 to 2018, and then we went through January of this year until it was fully cleaned up, because it takes a while to clean those fossils up. These are fossilized with calcite and gypsum, so it's like
That's
working
in
with
case you can't
drywall.
get to the site. I got a picture of it
Yeah,
next
yeah,
to the
there we
phone.
It saves me from taking the selfie I was about to take. Thank you, Governor. Thank you.
So you've got a soft mud that then has bones in it that are the consistency of drywall that we're trying to take out. And so that's why they take so long to clean up and why it's really great. We have such specialized staff that can do that. So then when that was finished, we partnered with a graduate student at the American Museum of Natural History who is specializing on mosasaurs. And she took the lead on the study along with some of our paleontologists, and we published that this year. So that's the first mosasaur named from the state of North Dakota. So really beautiful specimen. You can see the life reconstruction on page 7. And then,
And Walhalla immortalized now.
yep.
Yeah, well, Holly.
So we knew
That well.
Walhalla ensis. So ensis
Walhalla
means
ensis.
comes from, so comes
Got
from
it.
Walhalla. And we knew it was a new species before we knew it was a new genus. So we came up with Walhalla ensis, and then after we did all the work on it, realized that it didn't belong to a known genus like Mosasaurus, and we had to come up with a new name. We're like, well, we've got Walhalla ensis. What goes really well with that? Well, Walhalla ensis, Walhalla, very close to Valhalla, and Jormungandr is the world serpent from Norse mythology that was thrown into the ocean by Odin. So we're like, well, that's perfect. We'll name it Jormungandr.
That was so obvious.
Yeah, I was gonna say, those are the connections we were all making.
Yeah.
So everybody knew that, right?
That was the standard that went through everybody's head.
For sure.
Bunch of nerds over there, but there we are. So it's been very well received. We've gotten good press. A New York Times article on this, along with other places, which you can see some of the headlines on the bottom of page 6 there. So one thing that I will highlight, though, is this is one of the projects that has really been facilitated by the new technology that we've been developing. So bottom of page 7, you can see the skull reconstruction. Those are all the real skull bones, but the real skull bones, like I said, are so soft that we can't handle them too much or they start to fall apart. So we used a 3D scanner to 3D scan in every bone, and then we reassembled the skull digitally in the computer. And then if we were missing like the left side, but we had the right side, we could mirror it, put it over there. And then we partnered with an outside company, Treebold Paleontology, which is originally from Valley City, North Dakota. They're now in Colorado. They have other specimens of closely related species. So then they filled in the rest of the skull for us. so we could get a full model put together. So this is a scale size one. It's a 1/4 size. The real skull is about 3 foot long, but that's what the final model looked like, printed out and then painted to look like the original fossils. So, and then of course, we received that funding last legislative session to put the new exhibit in the Walhalla Public Library up there, which is the banner that you see at the top of the figures on page 6. That was the wall banner we put up. It's like 27 feet long by 5 feet tall in the museum there. And then there's a copy of the full-size skull and a copy of that Ichthyodectes, the big 8-foot fish skull, on display there as well. And I'll be going up probably next month to talk with them about adding a couple more things there to help really round out that exhibit. But that fits in with our whole concept of getting local fossils back out to the areas of the state they came from. So you don't just have to come to the State Museum, which we all love the State Museum, but we don't want everyone to have to come here. If a fossil came from Bayou, let's get a copy out there as well.
And give us the estimated age range.
This is right about 80 million years old. There's an ash layer that's just below the specimen that's dated at 80.4 million years. So we're just slightly younger than that.
So 0.4 would be precision to get you down to that last 400,000 years.
Yeah, so it's 80.4 plus or minus 110,000 years is the error part out of it, yeah. So I'm sure they could date it more precisely now. That's from the 90s. But a lot of times all we can say is like, it's this time period and there's like an error of like 5 or 6 million years. Like the Hell Creek is like 70 to 67 million years, somewhere in there. We don't usually have ashes right where the fossils come from to get an exact date. So that was what made this fossil a little bit special, was we could be like, well, we know this layer here is this age and the fossil's right above it. So we can really put an age on it.
Within a couple million years.
Within a, yeah. That's pretty good for us, but
You guys got a lot of catching up to the climate scientists, those guys.
they're much more precise.
Oh,
than us.
my word, I heard the other day that going up another 1.6 Celsius in the next several years. It's remarkable. You guys need better computers.
Tomorrow's supposed to be 50. At least I heard someone
Well,
say that, but it's.
Don't tell anybody. It'll be all over the climate desk at NPR.
Well, if we do have that kind of climate gain that they're talking about by the year 2100, North Dakota's going to have the climate of South Dakota.
I don't know how we're gonna keep everybody out of here. It's already tough. It's already tough enough.
The pheasants, can you imagine?
No.
So page 8, we wanted to report on, since the end of June, we've been having some water leakage issues in our offices in the Heritage Center. Not in the collections, thankfully, so the collection is fine, but at our offices, it's been leaking slowly. Like, it's not like a flood coming in, but it's a consistent seep coming in from the outer wall, because we're right on the outer wall, right by the, across from the DOT parking.
I'm glad you have these
Out there.
labeled, because I thought maybe you guys were doing a dig in your own.
Well, they did make us stand there and monitor in case anything was found, so. But, yeah, so that, we've had some seeping before back in October of 2019, but winter came in right away and everything froze up and it stopped. And so it wasn't until June we saw this again. But it was consistent this whole summer. And so in August, we started making some plans for what we could do, or facilities was making some plans for what could we do to track down the problem of this, because it was clear it wasn't going to go away. In October, they brought in EAPC, an outside contractor, to review the engineering plans for the building to look at what could be wrong and come up with a plan for figuring out what the leakage problem was. Starting on October 27th, they made the plan to cut a section of floor that's about 30 inches by 30 inches out of our slab so they could see what was going on underneath, because there's supposed to be drain tile under there. The question was there water trapped under the building, or was it water up against the building from the outside that was seeping in, was the question they were trying to answer. So they cut that hole in the floor, and at the first they took the slab out and there was just, sand and dirt there and it looked fine. And then they started digging down with a shovel to try to find the drain tile. And then they reached the point where there was less pressure on top of the water than the water was producing, and it started geysering up into their hole, like not high, but I mean like that much of a geyser under your building is still not great. And it filled up, as you can see in the top right there, right up to the concrete surface. So then they had to rig up a sump pump into that hole to keep it from flowing into our offices area. That setup went for about a week, but then the sump pump kept clogging up because there's not a good way to do it with all the dirt that's there. And we did have it start to flood out over that weekend. And so on the weekend of November 18th and 19th, they had to bring in an outside contractor to the outside of the building, which I'm sure everyone's seen the big hole dug outside the Heritage Center across from the DOT, down to the lower foundation. And then when they got low enough right to the bottom of the foundation, the pressurized water started coming out that way rather than into our offices. That took the pressure off of it. Water went down in the hole there, but now it was flowing outside about 3 feet below the level of the drainage ditch. So the drainage ditch is too high on that side, and we've got probably groundwater that's welled up because it was a relatively wet year, came up high enough, got into the building. So they came up with the plan to run a new set of drain tile outside the building. Instead of trying to put it into the existing drainage, they just ran it over to the sewer and dropped it in separately, which they were doing starting Thursday of last week through this morning. They've started burying it back over again. And then as of this morning, that hole is 3/4 of the way filled back up with water again in our offices. So I'm not certain if that fix is going to work. We'll see as we move forward. They're planning to not cover this hole for at least 30 days to see if the water goes down or if it does stay up. But so far, I don't know if we have a solid permanent solution yet for the water issues there.
Doug, I'm thinking we ought to get the water commission involved because they uncovered a new aquifer here.
Thank you.
Could help long-term
Seems to be
solution
some
for.
hidden aquifer on the state capitol grounds, at least in the southeast part.
So,
That, that's certainly something for the state lab. They're gonna want to look and make sure, because it could be perched water. Like if you go just 2 blocks north of the Capitol, Hannibal sandstone you've got a nice cemented sandstone, and water percolates down to that, and then it can't go any further, and it runs laterally. So you've got people just north of, like Senate Drive in that area, where if your basement is just a few inches lower than your neighbors, but you're closer to that cemented sandstone, then you have problems. And we've seen that. And maybe that's what's going on here too.
Has anybody formally passed that on to the folks that are working on the state lab?
I don't know, they made some comments about wanting to, like, needing to get in touch with them, but I haven't been involved in those conversations.
Should we do that? Because I don't know where they are in the geotech for the lab. I know they've got a generalized location over there, but that'd be important information.
I did pass it on to John Boyle saying about that perched water and the
Okay.
cemented sands.
Well, appreciate the detailed report because obviously we've got a lot of value toward the lower levels of the Heritage Center. And so the fact that you guys have been able to uncover this problem and are diagnosing it before we have loss of collections would be there's a lot of bright spots in the problems you're having.
Should mention that Bill Peterson is vacant, so we had to move 3 people out of that area, and he's found places for them in the Heritage Center. So we appreciate that.
So then just a quick note on top of page 10, there is a new vertebrate paleontology program starting at the University of North Dakota in the geology department there, which we have been assisting with. We gave some input during the hiring process, and then we're planning to partner with this person both on research and on our field program. His name's Dr. Paul Ullman. He came here from New Jersey, and they collected just across the border in Montana a partial duckbill dinosaur skeleton from the Hell Creek Formation this summer. Didn't have a place to put it in the department because it's a very large jacket, and so talking with the core library and Ed and Lynn, they made a place for it in one of the core labs up at the core library for the time being until they can get it open and get it cleaned down a bit, and then they should be able to take it apart into sections and then take it over to the geology building. And so just a note there. And if you want to see on page 3 in the lower right image, Dr. Ullman is there and present at our fossil dig where we're collecting that big jacket up at Pembina. He came out and assisted us as soon as he got into North Dakota last year. So we're hoping that's a good.
And you said that came originally from Montana?
The jacket, yes, across the border in Montana, yeah.
Well,
So-
since they robbed us of a chance of going to the national championship, I think it's good.
They can take their fossils,
Stealing
yep.
their fossils. It's good. conclude the report?
I just got a little bit, but I have to mention, I'm still trying to figure out why NDSU went with a trick formation where they could have just.
Yes.
You want a coaching job?
They already filled the coaching position.
It's fine with me.
Back on page 10, regulatory programs, we issued 1 permit for coal exploration. 12 during the third quarter, 12 permits for geothermal, 6 residential, 6 commercial, and his publications, 119. Of those, the vast majority are landslide maps. And then on page 15 for outreach, third quarter is always slow for us because we've got everyone out in the field, geologists and geologists. And so a few of us people were in at different times. We did a couple of tours of the collections and lab, a couple interviews for radio related paleontology. And once again, we did a assisted NDSU's geology department, which is closing, which again is a sore spot for me. But they came out on a field trip and we gave a presentation to them.
When are they closing? When are they
Closing?
Well, they're phasing it out, but they've already got professors leaving. You know, it's one of those predictable things where they say we're not gonna take any new majors, which means this will phase out over 3 years, but you've already got professors leaving or not being replaced. And so there was an article in the forum, you would say, you know, students complaining,
Sure.
which again was very predictable this was gonna happen.
Where do they feel they're gonna shift the student population for that? I'm just.
I don't know, you know, UMD has a program, Minot State has a program.
Yeah.
But as we talked about back in October, you know, all the predictions are a huge shortfall in geoscientists by the year 2030. So again, it's difficult, you know, UMD or not UMD, university presidents are looking more short-term. You know, they're looking at immediate enrollments, not looking that far down the road. So.
Actually, until I got this job, I've told you guys before, I was concerned that my friends in college who had this as their major were completely unemployable. And then I came here and I realized there's all this exciting work to do. And I wasn't aware, I hadn't heard before, that there was a projected shortfall coming as soon as 2030. Yeah, that's not even, you know, you say thinking short term, that's not even.
Is that part of
Very long.
baby boomer retirement and sort of when they
It's
and
that.
increased demand and fewer, and then more retiring professionals?
It's that, but there's fewer and fewer geoscience majors throughout the country, and that's true of engineering and the sciences in general. So
Interesting.
kids are not going into the right fields, you know, when they look down the road. But
It's interesting. It's kind of a period of discovery. The technology is different, and it just seems as though in recent years there have been more and more interesting stories along these lines of things taking place. Interesting.
that concludes my report.
Ed, Clint, thank you. Always fascinating, fun, always good learning for us.
Very good.
I'd like to tell your teams, happy holidays and thanks for all the another great year of work out in the field.
Absolutely.
It's a great press for North Dakota too. Very fun.
Very good.
You as well.
Lynn, you're sticking around? Yes, sir. And we are jumping into cases.
We're going to jump into cases here. That's okay. We've got 6 cases for your decision today. We'll just dive in and let the Attorney General return. Okay. The first one is case 30204. You can see up on the map, it's an application by Hess Bakken Investments 2, looking at a 3,800 acre, I believe, spacing unit where they want to drill a section line well. I'll show you on a map what Hess is proposing. I hope. Oh. Beg pardon?
So 4 full sections and 2 half sections. Lynn, is that what you got there?
Yes, so 4 full sections and 2 half sections, so it's 3,200 acres. I apologize. Their purpose in doing this is they want to co-locate this 2.5 mile lateral on a multi-well pad that they're planning to drill 4 other wells from. And so there's the potential savings of not doing a single well rig move. The difficulty, and so what we had asked them to analyze for us was, could they drill the well something like this, drill an actual 3 mile lateral, which is typical these days from an existing well pad. They have one on the east end and one on the west end. Hess came back and said, no, they really don't want to drill it from over there because that single rig move is going to cost a significant amount of capital, and it reduces the economic return. They did tell us in testimony that if they drill this well, and I guess I have the table, if they drill this well, no one will ever drill that other half mile. So it's stranded.
Yeah.
And about 111,000 barrels will be left in the ground. And the correlative rights of the people in the west half of those sections on the west end will be harmed because they will not participate or get any revenue from the recovery or the loss of that 111,000 barrels. And so I can show you that the economics are better, and Hess presented these. The economics are better for Hess to do a well move, which does 5 wells instead of 1, and it's only 2.5 miles long. However, the proposal causes waste, and it is not protective of correlative rights, and so we're asking you to approve an order that denies their application.
So move.
I'm not going to describe what you said.
You're okay? Are the fossils okay?
The phrasing was, it was just the plastic one. It was balancing.
Oh, it was that model of the skull?
I don't know, I handed it to Karen like this.
Very good.
But everything else.
The real fossils are okay.
The real fossils are fine.
I made a motion to deny stranding minerals and not protecting correlative rights. Or to protect correlative rights, I should say.
I think I just blew my chance to be a part of these fossil teams, so.
We're looking for a second.
Second.
Feel free, Drew, if you want to ask any questions here of Lynn.
Right?
Bottom line is Hess wants to do a 2.5 versus a 3 mile layout.
Yeah.
And he's showing the economics here that it's, both cases are economic for Hess.
Yes, absolutely. Both cases are highly economic. It's just the 2.5 is more economic for Hess. But again, it causes waste and damages people's correlative rights. And that half mile of section line will be forever stranded.
And what's the cost of moving that rig? What are they showing for that?
They estimated $600,000 more. So a 3 mile single well, the overall cost will be 3.8 million versus if they did 5 wells, it'd be 3.2 million. No, I'm sorry, that's the drilling cost. That's the difference is $600,000 for a 1 well rig move versus packaging it. So.
But then when they move it, they also get a chunk of that additional 111,000
Exactly.
barrels,
Correct.
right? Which is
Yes, absolutely.
$70 a barrel.
Absolutely. Yeah. They get the majority chunk. They don't own any of the leases in the mile to the west. That's other operators. And so, they're faced with either doing a single well move or a 5 well move. But it's our job to make sure that 111,000 barrels gets produced if it's economic, and that the people in the west half have their correlative rights protected.
So if we vote no, then they have an opportunity to come back and pursue what you were suggesting, which is the 3 mile layout. They do.
And in fact, they discussed one other proposal, and that was to go ahead and drill it from this pad, but to do a very long drill back to pick up that extra half a mile. So they've got a couple of options to develop this. That would probably not be as expensive as a single well rig move. So that's also an option for them, just not as attractive economically. So they're promoting their superior economics, and our job is to prevent waste and protect their rights. But they do have two options. They can come back with a 3-mile lateral proposal, either from this pad or from either one of the pads on the end.
We got a motion and a second. We'll call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General.
Yes.
Yes, and the yes vote was to deny his permit and have him come back with a.
Correct.
Okay. Next up, Lynn.
Case 30264 is a default order for a complaint. We issued a complaint against a company called I can find here, Freedom Energy. And Freedom Energy plugged a well, but has failed to reclaim the site. When we contacted them and told them they were in violation of the rules, they came back and said, we have dissolved the company, and they have not filed their Secretary of State papers since 2017. They're basically out of business and have just walked away. So what this order will do is impose 2 penalties, one for a failure to reclaim, one also for a failure to let us know that they were going out of business, which they're supposed to do. Total penalties of $42,000. We will be confiscating a bond to cover as much of the reclamation work as we can. And then we're applying for EJA formula grant funds too. So there won't be any net cost to the state, but we do want to make sure that industry knows it's more expensive to violate the rules and walk away than it is to follow the rules and comply and go ahead and reclaim the location. So we're asking you to impose a $42,000 penalty.
What's the practical impact to them though? If they, I mean, they're out of business. And that's just the bond is remaining. They paid for the bond initially. And so now there's not much impact to them. There's nothing,
So
I'm not
we-
suggesting there's something else we gotta do. I'm just curious.
We will look to see if there are any other
I
assets
see.
of any kind. There were actually a family of 4 companies. And so there may be some leasehold or some working interests in other wells or something that, so what we typically do at this point, if you impose this penalty is once this order is final, we'll seek a judgment in district court. And then we'll follow up that judgment by looking for assets, like I said, like a non-operated working interest or something like that we could collect on.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Is there we said we had a bond, so have we been sitting on their bond since 2017 and did not know they were out of business?
Correct. Yep. They're supposed to, when they made the decision in 2017 to basically dissolve the company, they were supposed to notify us with a new organization report and let us know what they were up to. And they did not. They just went, they ghosted us. So.
Do we have any way of flagging in our system a pattern similar to this where we have no activity in these idle bonds, or I don't know where we might identify this sooner, or how did we come to discover this one? Was it some landowner complaining about an unreclaimed site, or?
Actually, it's our field inspectors that flagged this as a long-term problem. But yes, Governor, what we've done is we've been in contact with Alberta, who has a very robust and detailed asset evaluation that they do on an annual basis of every company. And so we're starting that process. It'll probably get started in January. Well, I guess our petroleum engineer is coming in March, right? Yeah. We're going to start with our new petroleum engineer in March with building that database and begin to evaluate people's activity on their bonds and then also their assets versus liabilities, looking at everything from marginal wells to new wells and permits. So we're we're starting that process with the advice from the province of Alberta.
And that's a great project. I'm glad to hear that's starting. Yep. Is there a name for that project that we're calling that or?
We haven't given it a name.
Just make sure it has the word tundra in it.
Yeah.
We were thinking mammoth or something like that.
Polar bear.
That's another new one that just came up. Another thing we don't have.
Extinct.
Trying to protect.
Polar bears. Well, we'll keep digging in the rocks.
We're gonna try to avoid the ends of the spectrum there. but, Yeah, so
Well, that's great to hear. And then how large was their bond?
50,000.
And then do we, what county is this site in?
Let me see, Freedom, I believe, is in Stark County?
Yes.
Yeah. This is a Stark County well.
Okay, is there a way, you mentioned that they have not notified the Secretary of State, is there a way to engage the Secretary of State's office somehow where we can connect those two silos together or?
That is one of the things that we're incorporating into this process is the Secretary of State has really modernized a lot of the ability to search these companies on their website. They don't do any enforcement, but they do flag them as inactive involuntary or inactive voluntary. And so part of the process is going to be, at least once a year to check that and see, has somebody gone inactive involuntary on the Secretary of State's office? That should be a really early flag. They didn't file their annual report.
And in this yet to be named project, how many companies would we be tracking today, or how many companies do we have bonds from, say, in North Dakota today?
185.
So it's not a big universe. We should be able to
It's not a huge universe. We should be able to get very granular
Yeah.
on that analysis and
get
be able, pretty quickly through our database and the Secretary of State to evaluate 185 operators.
Yeah, great to hear. Okay. We'll call for the vote. We have a motion. A second, I think we did right one. Yeah.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General,
Yes.
Governor.
Yes.
Lynn, I don't have an order for that one. I have quite a few other things.
Okay.
So maybe we can.
We'll look and see. I don't have it either.
Karen,
We'll have to get you an order to sign.
that vote, Karen, was for item 2. For 2.
Yes, item 2,
Your item 2 for Freedom Energy.
order 232874 in case 302.
Correct. Okay, all right. On to you, Lynn.
Sorry. I was just checking one more time to see if the blank order got disappeared somewhere. Okay, the next two cases, I think we can take 30334 and 30335. Too far? There we go. You're going to see maps here, but both of these are located in Bicentennial Bicentennial Field, and that's out in Billings County, north of Medora. You can see just north of the grasslands area there. What we're looking at here is a proposal by Foundation Energy. They want to take these existing wells, drill a hole in the casing up in the lodge pole, basically up at the beginning of that log section, and then drill down and put a horizontal lateral in the Bird Bear A. So you see on there the Bird Bear. You see that red highlighted interval right at the top of the Bird Bear. That's the Bird Bear A. That means that everything in the lodge pole and through the Bakken pool section and the Three Forks section would be exposed in this well bore. And the well would look like this. So they'd start well above the Bakken. So you'd have lodge pole, Bakken, Three Forks, and the interval down to the Bird Bear exposed open hole. And then they want to produce that lower lateral in the Bird Bear formation. This saves them about $500,000 in dry hole costs. But what it does is it exposes that Bakken formation during their whole production. And it makes it almost impossible for anyone to come in and drill a horizontal Bakken well in the spacing units. And this is spaced for Bakken all in and around here. So if they tried to hydraulically fracture a Bakken well in the spacing next door or in the spacing unit, they'd be in communication with this well. As you can see, the mineral ownership is very diverse. You've got a mixture of state and federal and private minerals in here. And so they'd basically be condemning the Bakken formation in a 1280. There have been 2 recent wells drilled in the Bakken out there, one that's got an estimated recovery over 500,000 barrels and one over 600,000 barrels. And so, again, it's not protective of correlative rights. It harms the mineral ownership of the private and federal and state minerals in the Bakken around where they want to do this spacing unit. They can do the well. They just have to spend an extra $500,000. It's still economic. It's just less economic. So a little bit like the other story I was telling you, their economics are better if you approve their application, but they themselves have 3 Bakken wells permitted in this area. And so this well is going to prevent the development of the Bakken immediately around this well if we approve their application and allow them to drill it as proposed. So we're asking you to deny the application, tell them to go back and figure out a way to isolate the Bakken and Three Forks and still produce their bird bear.
So move.
Second.
A motion second. Lynn, on the charts you're showing here, it looks like this section 34 is the pink.
Yes,
Go
sir.
back to the,
Thank you.
go back one. Or there it is, right there. Okay.
Yep.
But then is this an existing unit?
This is an existing spacing unit in the bird bear.
But where's the actual unit? Because an existing typical Bakken would be a 1280. Are you showing that this is
Yeah,
just
I'm not showing you the Bakken unit, but the Bakken unit is that section and the one to the north of it.
Okay.
And then there are
so
Bakken
there-
spacing units all around it. It's completely surrounded by
Okay, so you're
1280.
showing here a 640 for the bird bear,
Correct.
because they just want to develop, but they want to go through the Bakken, through an existing spacing, and there's existing spacing unit that overlays this to try to get down to a 640 bird bear unit.
Yes,
But then they don't want to do the casing on the well as they drive down through there.
correct.
So they can go the same location and you could approve a 640 in the bird bear, but they were just willing to put the casing around and it would still be economic based on the amount of production that you anticipate.
That's correct.
Any other
Yes.
questions?
Is,
And the second one is this, Governor. It's right next door. And it's actually a north-south 640. Right? It's 2 half sections, but they want to do the same thing. And you can see that one of them's on state minerals. So there they would be condemning state minerals by leaving the Bakken section open.
Okay,
The blue is state.
the right, so the right half of where you're showing 3335, the right half of that blue section, that's all state minerals.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So the 1280 would be the same 2 sections, but full sections, and they're wanting to do a bird bear 640, just the east half of those sections.
Okay, interrupted you, go ahead.
there seems to be some obvious things here, but somebody's not doing the math, because why would you leave that open and risk your other Bakken formation? I mean, you're gonna have to do some fracking, you're gonna have to do some work. If you leave that open, you're causing yourself a lot of headaches on this one when you start to develop the Bakken around it, because it will communicate. So then you're gonna have those issues. I mean, is there somebody just missing something, or is there something diabolical and devious behind this? I don't get it.
Well, the best that we've been able to determine is that it's short-term thinking. The bird bear is lower risk,
Yeah,
and so they want to maximize the profitability of the bird bear, and they're willing to risk the future profitability of the Bakken, which is more expensive to develop. because it requires a frac job, which adds, $6 million to the cost of the well. They're willing to postpone that and put that at risk in order for the near-term increased profitability of the bird bear.
Okay.
But again, it's counter to the purpose of oil and gas regulations, which is protect the resource, prevent the waste, protect the correlative rights.
Okay, any other questions? And this is a motion to deny, and then are we doing, is this motion cover both of these?
I think there's two motions in the packet, or is it, there's one motion, I think, for the two together.
Okay, so we gotta do the second one then.
You remember, Reese?
We put.
Are there two separate motions? We put separate motions.
So this is,
So I
Do
already
the-
made a motion.
You want to move them both?
Yeah, I'm fine with moving both because they're dealing with the same issue.
Correct. The orders are identical except for the well names.
I'll second.
so the motion we now have on the table is for attachment 14 and attachment 15 is one motion. And a yes vote would be to deny and send them back to the planning board, the drawing board.
Yeah.
Correct.
Order 32,947 and 32,946.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General?
Yes.
Governor?
Yes. Motion carries.
Okay, last order then, or last case, 30336. This is located in Bi County. And what we have here is a proposal from an operator, Phoenix. Is it in Northern Williams? Okay. They want to drill a 3-mile lateral, which is on pattern, but it's overlaying a pattern of 1280s. So you can see it in pink here on the map. The issue for them is the wildlife, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife minerals under the lake system that you see there in section 22. So if I could go to the next map, what you can see happens here is there is a 1280 well to the north, and there's 1280 wells to the south. If you were to approve this proposal, you would strand section 22 and make it uneconomic. It would become a stranded 640 with no development potential. And their reasoning is that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife leases in section 22 are not leasable. So here's a map of section 22 that we requested from them. What you can see though actually is there's 20 acres of state lands in section 22. And there is 300 acres of private minerals in section 22. They are being harmed by the refusal of U.S. Fish and Wildlife to lease, but our experience from over in the Lostwood area is that if we deny this application and they drill a section line well, either on the east section line or the west section line, or if they drill a 1280 well that penetrates those private minerals over in the west end of this, they will put the fish and wildlife minerals in drainage and they'll be forced to lease them. So that will take some time. That's understandable. But the other option is to completely strand section 22, and then the state and private minerals there are left stranded. So their correlative rights are not protected, and section 22 is wasted to the tune of probably 250,000 barrels or more. So we are asking you to deny their proposal because it strands section 22, which has the lakes there on it, and has U.S. Fish and Wildlife minerals.
What's the name of that lake?
Can you read it? Alkali Lake.
We only have like 5 of those in North Dakota.
So it's in your prior map there, it's a west and northwest side of 22 that's private.
Yeah.
Correct.
It's there,
It's-
and then,
That whole north area, they actually have the purple area leased and under lease to this company.
Hmm.
Yeah, and yet
Is the
they're
purple-
willing to strand it.
Is the purple also private?
Yes. Yeah, so the
The
white
purple
and
and
purple
the
are
white.
private.
And then, but if we thinking out for our job, from a state land board, minerals, in that 20, is it
20 acres. in
20 acres in the
southeast area.
southeast corner there? When if they develop the north and the northwest, if they develop the north and we've got the drainage occurring, and then they have to participate, then that would open up eventually the opportunity for like a 1280 coming from the north to hit the state acres also.
Yes.
A
Yeah, so-
north-south well that would reach all the way down to the state acres.
Yeah, so a single well reaching all the way down along that section line, or a single well reaching 7/8 of the way down and just not quite penetrating those federal minerals results in drainage, forces them to lease, and then the state minerals and the private minerals can be developed from the north.
So back to your other map, here, Lynn, on the, if we deny this, then, and their proposal is for this 3 mile, is it gonna end up back being 2 mile?
Yes,
Is that
and
probably gonna be the solution?
yes, and 15 and 22 is already a 2 mile 1280. So they're already approved to drill from section 15 down along that west side, almost to the end of section 22, and put the fish and wildlife minerals in drainage.
They don't have to even go through a process to be able to do that.
It's already approved.
Did I make a motion?
So move.
Second?
Motion and second, and then again, this is a
To deny.
yes vote is to
A
deny.
yes vote is to deny their
And also
application.
sending them back to we're grateful for all these drilling plans, but we're feeling a little bit like Dr. No today, but we're,
Yeah, we are. We feel like Dr. No, but, what we're seeing is just a series here of people trying to do odd spacing units to maximize their near-term economics at the sacrifice of reserves and correlative rights
in long term.
and long-term.
Okay, call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General,
Yes.
Governor.
Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you. And then the final item we have is, it's in your packet, I believe. It's the hearing schedule for oil and gas hearings for next year, for 2020.
So move.
Second?
Motion and second on the hearing schedule. We'll call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General,
Yes.
Governor.
We'll take that concludes DMR.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll take a couple minute break here between this and the transmission authority. And we got some holiday goodies. Maybe we can pass some of those to.
I want to compliment you on your tree topper.
Yeah.
I think
That was-
having an oil rig up there is ideal.
Yeah. It was a recent ad just before this meeting. So it was a good, timely. Yes. Okay, super. All right, take it away, Claire.
Well, thank you, Governor and Commissioners. Appreciate all your support for a resilient and reliable grid and generation resource adequacy. I have quite the fan club here today, so it's funny when you have money, how many friends you get. I'd like to introduce the first is Tricia DeGleeker from MISO. She's the State Policy Director, so she's my contact with MISO.
Great, welcome. Good to
She's
have
up
you here.
here, and she and I are having dinner with Sherry Hull with the Public Service Commission.
Tell us where you're based out of. Great.
And of course, Josh and Zach from North Dakota Association of Electric Cooperatives. And then Matt Hansen is the CEO of McKinsey Electric, Carl Ackers Engineering, and I can't remember what John Carnes' position is.
Compliance, about key accounts now.
Okay, key accounts. But
Also with,
anyway,
also with
Also
McKinsey.
McKinsey Electric.
Great, okay.
so these guys manage the electric supply for over half of North Dakota's oil production. So
I was gonna say that's a critical role that you play. So
anyway.
thank you all.
Yeah.
And obviously our local co-ops are a huge part of our state's infrastructure too. So great to have you all here.
And then last but not least, Mark Brink from Otter Tail Power. So
Yep.
Good afternoon.
So I want to, is this the blinker? Yeah, there we go.
We're glad you got a fan club, Claire.
Yeah.
We've been wondering.
It's unusual, yeah. So I'm gonna cover.
What's that like? I don't-
Yeah. You get invited to Fossil Days. Is that
Did you need a second on a motion?
Got a couple motions in mind all of a sudden.
So just a little bit about the activity since.
Drew got up today and said he was gonna break some skulls.
This is the worst meeting of my life. I'm just glad it was plastic. 3D print those things anytime we want.
So since you appointed me director, we have completed the North Dakota Resiliency Plan, and this is an appendix to the North Dakota Emergency Plan. Talks about all the things that can affect grid resilience. Today we're going to talk more about the DOE grant program. I've been following MISO Advisory Committee and their board committee and Tricia's help, and also following SPP committee work. And then the North Dakota Transmission Authority is now an adjunct member of the Midwest Reliability Organization. They're the organization that works with utilities, and utilities are part of that to have standards for reliability and resiliency. And we are completed the first phase of our transmission capacity study. I believe that was in the packet. And we'll keep you tuned as we go forward on that. And then over the last 5 months, I've met with every utility, and I've purposed to go to their location. So I've been down to Fergus Falls and to Minneapolis to Excel and Minnesota Power, as well as our incumbent utilities in the U Basin and so forth here in the state. A little bit more on this transmission study. It's a $54,000 study to understand where we are with transmission capacity, where there's potential for interconnections, and what we need to do looking forward. And, you got that study. We'll get the final study probably at the end of second quarter 2024, and we'll keep you apprised of that. I wanted to touch a little bit on the projects that are occurring in North Dakota. I got the sense sometimes that some people think nothing's happening, but there's some pretty major things happening here over the next few years. And I again want to describe the Bakken, and Matt and Carl and John could speak much more to it. But essentially, there's transmission capacity to the Bakken to carry 1,000 megawatts. And there's a 1,500 megawatts of load. So there's generation in there to make up that 500 megawatts. When the wind's blowing, that's providing it. Otherwise, it's the gas plants at Lonesome Creek and Pioneer Station by Williston. So that's not a good deal. Plus, we have aspirations to have tremendous development in the Trenton area, as well as continued oil development. So Basin is building this 35-mile line in 2025 that goes through Mackenzie's territory from essentially Killdeer to Johnson's Corner. And then the next year, 2027 or 2026, is from Stanton Station, Knowles Station, around the east side of the Lake Audubon over to Tioga, another 345 line. And when those are completed, there'll be transmission capacity of 2,000 megawatts into that area. So you might think, well, that's wonderful, but that's good. But as we want to grow the economy up there and grow the development, there'll be needs for more. So anyway, while it's good, we need to look ahead further. And then there's 2 lines coming down from SaskPower, Frostburg Device territory. Another exciting project that addresses congestion is the MDU and Otter Tail Power Jamestown to Ellendale transmission project. That's where the J and the E come from. And that's about 100-mile long project. They're making good progress. They've got public meetings and so forth, and in-service date of 2030, I believe, Mark, unless that's changed.
What's the new the need in the Allendale area? What do you, what's the projected expansion of?
They're building substations at both ends. Otter Tail will be building a new substation in Jamestown, and MDU will be building a new substation or expanding the substation at Allendale. There's some crypto on both ends of that, correct? Yeah.
That's correct. And then there are generator interconnection requests that are precipitating the build out.
And is there more wind anticipated going into that area as well, from a generation standpoint?
And then the next project here is one that was on a topic at the last legislature, and that's retooling both ends of the DC transmission line that goes from Center North Dakota to Duluth. It's Minnesota Power Elites. They're modernizing that, so it'll increase the capacity of that line from 550 megawatts to 900 megawatts. Well, that's a big deal for export capacity. And if the next step would require some reconductoring, but they could get it to 1,500 megawatts. So they got $50 million of DOE grant, so they're pretty pleased. And that, again, is construction 28 to 31. So plenty of transmission projects coming along. And then this joint targeted interconnection queue, we're full of acronyms, I'm sorry, but they call it JTIQ. That's a project that's between MISO and SPP on the seams. And that's a 3-4. In our part, there's quite a few projects, but our share of that project is from Bison Station, which is northwest of Fargo, down to Big Stone to Otter Tail's power plant in South Dakota, 345 line. They got a DOE grant of $464 million, which they were pretty pleased about. But they found that it'll probably still cost more than they thought in the initially, just because of the cost of the project has because of product prices has eclipsed their original estimate. That will also help with congestion. Then the other one that's pretty exciting is the Grid United's project to essentially the grand plan is to get DC transmission line from Washington State to Michigan State. And North Dakota's chunk, which is further along, is from Colstrip, Montana to St. Anthony and then up to Center, North Dakota. That's a 400-mile line. It's a merchant plant, so it's not going through the PSC or it's not rate-based. Merchant plant, and that has a capacity of 3,000 megawatts. They've been doing quite well. They got one rolling in Arizona here a month or so ago. They had good landowner meetings across the southern part of North Dakota into Montana, so it looks promising. Very exciting.
That's big. 3,000 megawatts.
So there are projects. Grid United has several of these projects down the corridor, the Midwest, crossing the east to the west. But here's our concern. This is, I don't know if you've seen this map before, but this is elevated risk we were in for incident operating reserves in above normal conditions last summer. So we are in the yellow area, both MISO and SPP. Tricia, I'm sure, has heard a lot about this, so that's been a concern. Now, this next one is SPP alerts, and ignore 2019 because they use a different way of calculating their alerts. But since 2020, look at the amount, the increase or the trend line for capacity alerts. The phone was dinging quite a bit this summer. So from 111 in 2020 to 684. So this is why we're concerned about grid reliability. And now, about a month ago, we got NERCS, that's North America Reliability Council, right? Yeah. Again, the watchdog, that's the whole North America footprint. North Dakota Transmission Authority is a member of the SALS, more regional subset, Midwest Reliability Organization. But again, our area is in this elevated potential for insufficient operating reserves in above normal conditions. So we don't like this map. And NERC, one thing that we've noticed over the last maybe 8 to 12 months is people are starting to take notice of it. We're not the only ones crying about this. And NERC, North American Reliability Corporation, has now become very vocal, loud, and regular about sounding this alarm. So that's really good news for us and for sending a message to states and Congress and so forth. But
Tell us more about NERC. I mean,
NERC is an organization of utilities that it was established in about 2000.
Early 2000s.
Yeah,
Ohio
2000.
blackout.
Yeah, the blackout in Ohio. And they go, come on, you guys, you utilities, you better figure this out. So they established this council or corporation, which is based on utilities that work together to establish reliability standards and impose them on them.
so the shareholders of NERC are power companies.
Yes.
So it's kind of it says corporation, but it's an industry funded.
That's what I understand. Yes. Yeah.
The funding I'm not sure about, but it's essentially a standard setting organization.
It's not government funded. I think that it's self-funded.
So are there two aspects of this? When you start to look at it, power generation is one thing,
Mhm.
but our biggest issue is just the infrastructure. It's transmission.
Well, I would say it's both. You have to have reliable electrons going into the transmission.
Well, if they just get out of the way, we could do that.
Yeah.
No problem.
Then you need transmission.
Then you need transmission.
And the other element of this is to remember that we're trying to bring manufacturing back home here in North Dakota. We're trying to grow, our
Yeah.
industry. So it all takes power. A month or so ago, I was in Detroit at the Midwest Governors Association meeting, and we had a speaker from GM, and that speaker from GM said that their new auto plants use twice as much power as auto manufacturing. So it's
Sure.
electrification.
Or automation
Yeah.
or automation.
So here on the top left, this is nationwide. There's been a 4% decrease in generation capacity over the last 10 years. At the same time, we've had a 3% increase in electrical demand. So you can't reduce capacity and increase demand very long before you're in trouble. But fortunately, MISO, SPP, NERC, they're all speaking up now. I think we're making some headway in raising.
How much excess demand, capacity was there, go back a couple of years, and how quickly are those lines diverging? I mean, for their
Might
rate
have
of
finished
decrease.
answer that. You might answer that from MISO's perspective, but it was about 15% or.
We found that's the reserve margin on
Yeah.
how much we need on top just to be secure.
Yeah,
We found during our last year's capacity auction that our auction didn't clear. It was short. And so there was a reaction this year in making sure there was more capacity available for that auction. We do expect to have a safe winter. We're looking good the next couple of years, but especially in the MISO region, when you hit that 2028 period, we get very tight again. And so MISO's doing everything it can to provide input and bring notice to this, like NERC is and the other RTOs.
When you're doing those analysis of, tight or okay, how do you calculate in the intermittent versus sustainable baseload? Because it seems like that answer could change based on weather conditions.
Yes, absolutely. So that's called resource accreditation. We have done it one way historically, and since so much is changing and the resource types are changing so quickly, we're in the middle of reevaluating how we do resource accreditation and what value we give to resources. And so we are now modifying that to only give value to the resources and the amount of value if they're available when we need them in the riskiest hours. And that's a big departure from what we've done historically.
It seems like a really positive change to
Yeah,
actually recognize reality.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge thing. Because otherwise you could look at some chart and go, hey, we have all kinds of capacity, but you got 28% of that bar on the right is intermittent
Right.
on that chart.
Yep.
And we know as these folks that are sitting around the room know in North Dakota, I mean, we had days last winter where we had we had 1% of our wind production available over a period of 3 days.
There was actually a time when it was negative.
But out of a total, what's the total rated wind? Now, how many megawatts were we?
Oh, I don't know megawatts, but I
I
guess
mean-
Pete and Mark are familiar with, they, shoot.
I thought we had a number it was, I mean, it was, the 1% was a small number of
Oh, sure. Okay,
does anybody in the room have that number?
It's roughly 4,000.
I think so, but I get nervous when I.
4,000 megawatts
The capacity.
of wind.
Want to switch subjects?
There's something more important than grid resilience.
So we did the DOE grants, and I meant to say this right away, how wonderful your team here is and helpful for me, Karen and Brenna and Reese, so it's been awesome. They've been so helpful, but we received 12 applications. The total project list amounts to $33 million, and the grant requests from the 12 applicants total 17 million, but we only have $8 million or $8.183 million. The grant that includes the DOE portion and the North Dakota 15% match. We had 3 technical reviewers review the 12 applications, and the top 4 applicants are before you. The first one is Capital Electric Cooperative, which serves around the Bismarck area. They had the highest score of 237, and their request is for 329,000 or 21,000 for some overhead to underground conversions across state and federal highways. And you might wonder, well, what's that about? Well, if you remember about a year and a half ago up in Montreal territory when they had the bad storm and the lines went down. So it was created such a problem because emergency vehicles couldn't go, the snow plows couldn't go until all of those road crossings got fixed, and it really delayed the restoration of electricity at that point. So that's how that really helps grid reliability and house moves and so forth. If the big loads can go down the highways without having to worry about the power lines. Second scoring was Otter Tail Power, and had a score of 229, and theirs is quite comprehensive. What they're using is technology. They want to increase their inspections of their transmission and distribution poles using some spatial-based software for pole inspections. They're investing in an intelligent vegetation management system to analyze the vegetation underneath the transmission lines, power lines, and using drone-based technology for that. And then the other element of technology is to do ultrasonic technology to evaluate component failure in their 250 substations. So it's a really technology focused application and very well done. Northern Plains was the third top scorer at 205, and their request is for $586,000 for electronic SCADA reclosure installation. And SCADA stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. Essentially, it's being able to communicate with switches, predictors of outages and so forth. So technology in installations in their service territory. Northern Plains is located in the Can-Do area, Jamestown, Ontario. And then McKinsey had a score of 173, and They have some capacitor bank installations, which really beefs up the voltage. You've got some low voltage areas that are concerned 92% about. That's not good. And then they want to install some optic cable, ground wire, about 23 miles of it. And that's again for their communication system. And I believe 255 SCADA installation supervisory control data acquisition control. So our technical reviewers rank these 4 out of the 12 top, and McKinsey's won't be fully funded. Theirs would be funded at about a 70% because we don't have enough money to their project.
Did you have the same technical reviewers review each of the projects?
Yes.
And was there some insight on the McKinsey project on why the one reviewer viewed that one substantially lower than other projects?
No, I don't really.
Anybody from McKinsey have a point of view on that, or what's the, anybody else here?
Haven't seen the scores, so I can't speak to that.
Good.
So our technical reviewers, one was a retired utility engineer, the other one was a retired Air Force electrical engineer, and the other one is a consultant engineer.
Well,
Yes,
based on the recommendation, I would move the recommendation to fund these.
And you're doing all 4 at
All
once?
4 is, yeah, it's in the motion.
Yep.
Under
19.
yeah,
Attachment 19, yep. Okay. We have motion.
Second.
Any other questions or comments on the projects? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote.
Commissioner?
yes.
Attorney General?
Yes.
Governor?
Yes. Okay, next.
Okay, so the next topic, and I'll try to be quick, but the North Dakota Association of Electric Cooperatives has been working on pursuing GRIP funding. And they've been working on this since way last winter. And the second round of GRIP funding has become available, and they're excited about working on our proposal, doing a proposal on this, and it would amount to 250 miles of new transmission line in the project, 27 miles of new build, and 4 direct substation upgrade. Wondering why are they coming to us? Well, they need a government entity to be a prime applicant, and so I guess they shared these slides here. I just they're looking at Area 3, which is Grid Innovation Program. This is the second round. And the award size that they're able to apply for is $250 million. That's the maximum. We've got these slides, but in the interest of time, here's was a picture of what they're proposing: 250 miles of new transmission line, 27 rebuild, and 4 substation upgrades. And they represent electric cooperatives that have transmission infrastructure. So it includes Minn Kota Power, Central Power, McKinsey Electric, Montreal Electric, Rough Rider, Burke Divide, Slope, and Morgan Sioux, and Cam. Just wanna.
And this is, we'd be applying to DOE. Yeah, I looked at it. Looks pretty good.
So here, and Josh, if you want to add to this, but the North Dakota Industrial Commission would be the prime applicant. We serve as the person that pushes the button. But the state association is willing to do all the heavy lifting and all the work and the process to get there. And of course, we're going to Reese and I'll be very interested in making sure that it's complementary to North Dakota's mission and the Industrial Commission standards.
Yeah, you guys would have to provide the oversight.
Right.
Accountabilities.
Right.
So moved.
I'll second.
Another motion and second. Any questions or comments? Call to the vote.
Commissioner?
Yes. Yes.
Attorney General,
Yes.
Governor.
Yes.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas.
And Amy, on this last one with coordination between the state and the co-ops and then the local co-ops, whatever, I mean, again, great project and let's go win a big grant.
Yeah, it's
I mean, when we acted together as one, we saw what could happen with hydrogen grants and other things. So let's just keep it going.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Claire. Thanks, Fan Club.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Hey, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if Claire can get that to you, but I would, kind of an outlier that one of the.
I'll ask them if they can release that, be
Yeah,
good for future reference.
or if they can't release that, maybe they can person. Had concern because clearly he was, had some concerns or wouldn't have been scored.
Yeah, noteworthy, so I'll follow up. Thank you.
Right. Well, thank you. Okay, all
We have Deanne on the line.
right, there's Deanne.
Yes.
Can we get Deanne into the big?
You can leave me tiny. I'm fine with that.
Got some beautiful decorations that you've got going on there for the holidays. We kind of
I tried-
expected to see a bison totally draped with
I tried to, there is one with the statue with the Santa hat and I could not find it. Sorry to disappoint you, but I tried.
Your house is nicer than the governor's.
It's not my house. It's Karen's office. That's Karen's office.
That was a great response.
Working on it.
Well, welcome, Deanne. Fire away.
All right, we have the Central Plains Water District as the first loan. And they've requested $9,714,000 and they're eligible for $8,379,000 of loan forgiveness. So they'd have a net loan of $1,335,000. They've also applying for cost share of $3,633,000. They have pledged the system revenues and requested a 30-year loan 20-year loan repayment. So their average annual payment will be $78,000. They intend to increase the rates by $10 per user per month and should be able to repay that. And based on that information, the advisory committee recommended approval of this loan.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Any questions or comments? And this is on Central Plains Water District, attachment 22.
Yep.
Hearing none, we'll call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General.
Yes.
Governor.
Yes.
Okay, the next loan is South Central Regional Water District. They've requested $2,497,000 towards a $9.9 million project to connect the city of Ashley to their water district. They are requesting $7,487,000 of cost share in addition to our loan. They have requested a 30-year loan term and the average annual payment will be $105,000. They could repay this without any rate increase, and based on that information, the advisory committee recommended approval of this loan.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Deanna, how are the rules applied where some of these projects get loan forgiveness and others don't, or how, and is there a cap on the amount of loan forgiveness that you have available to you each year? And just explain that a little bit.
Sure. So each year the projects or the programs have to request questionnaires, and then they go through and they rank the questionnaires. And so the drinking water program, when they rank the questionnaires, they have 100 points. And for the base, which is what the Central Plains received their loan forgiveness under. And they look at the water quality, water quantity, affordability, infrastructure adequacy, if there's going to be any consolidation or regionalization, and then miscellaneous. So that's what their points are based on. And so all the projects are ranked, and the top projects then are offered loan forgiveness. And so that happens every year, and they're just in the process of completing that for the upcoming year. And then the loan forgiveness comes from the capitalization grants. So each year when we get grants from EPA, Congress tells us how much of each of those grants have to be given out as additional subsidization. As I've mentioned before, the base grants that we've been receiving, those amounts have been reduced because they've been earmarking the money for projects. And so North Dakota's base money has been reduced because we get the minimum amount. And now that they've reduced the amount, they've given all these earmarks to all of these projects in other states. We've gone from like $11 million down to this $11 million, and we would have to give out 20% as loan forgiveness. Now we're down to, I think, $5 million and 20% as loan forgiveness. So that amount's been reduced. But then we also received the bill funding, which required we give out loan forgiveness along with that money. So we do have loan forgiveness with the bill money as well. So it's kind of confusing, probably better illustrated with a PowerPoint and the different buckets, but the base funding that we've had and where we've always got our loan forgiveness has gone down substantially because of the earmarks.
That would be a good topic for a future meeting, just to lay that out so we can see where the, what states politically are managing to get first crack at the dollars versus it being distributed perhaps more equitably. Be a good thing to understand.
Sure.
We can't push back if we don't know what we're up against.
Yep.
But then when the loan forgiveness works, when you use those federal dollars as loan forgiveness, is a loan made and then the loan there's an act of a loan, but then there's an act of the loan being paid off in one fell swoop, or do the payments come over time, or how does it actually mechanically work from a cash flow standpoint?
Sure. So we thought we could try to forgive it up front, and we found that that's what they would do, is take the amount of the loan forgiveness and they would never draw the loan portion. So we do it if they receive 75% loan forgiveness, we do that on a draw by draw basis. So if they draw $100,000, then 75,000 of that is forgiven at the time of the draw. So then they have a $25,000 loan when they make that draw. And so it's, as they draw down the loan, they get 75% loan forgiveness as they draw it down. And that is generally our cap on our loan forgiveness is generally 75%. And in the instance where they have loan forgiveness from us and cost share from the Department of Water Resources, we cap the combination at 90%.
But there is cash that went out the door to pay for the project somewhere.
Right. Yes. But what I'm saying is, we don't allow them to receive 100% grant. They do have to have some skin in the game.
In this case, 10% potentially if they get a grant from both the Water Commission and from here.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. I think I had gone through South Central.
Call for the vote.
Commissioner?
Yes.
Yes.
Governor?
Yes.
And the last item is just a memo regarding Buffalo, the advisory committee approved a $1.33 million loan for a project in that community that would replace their sanitary force main that was undersized and causing strain on their lift station pumps.
Anything else, Dan?
That's all I have today.
Great, thank you. Happy holidays.
Same to you guys. Merry Christmas and thank you for everything. Have a nice, hopefully brown Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Bye.
I know. Okay, on to Industrial Commission legal update. Lynn, you want to join us? Bill?
Okay, yep, so the first one's the Northwest Landowners, that's the four states lawsuits. Only update there is the schedule has been pushed back a bit. The court finally granted the Farm Bureau's motion to intervene. And in doing so, it recognized that would disrupt the schedule, so it lifted the first brief deadline, which was on December. And the parties are now conferring on what the replacement schedule is going to be. But it's probably going to push our dispositive motion deadline 30 to 60 days back at minimum.
Do they have a identified plaintiff?
The Farm Bureau, as an organization, is the plaintiff, and now that they're in, we are going to serve them with, we intend to serve them with discovery to identify if they have individual members who own property that will be impacted. But other than that, no updates on that particular litigation.
Well, we should be able to identify a lot of Farm Bureau members that'll have a positive. Right, there must be when we permitted 80 square miles of storage space, there must be Farm Bureau members within that 80 square miles that are receiving checks for storage, so.
Presumably there are, yes, sir.
Are we working to identify those? I mean, it's a.
Well, we know that the overwhelming percentage of impacted landowners are willing participants. I don't know that we have access to the records to determine which of them are Farm Bureau members.
Is that something as part of our defense in this case we might want to pursue, or is that?
I don't know if that issue is it's a political argument, but I don't think that's a legal argument to go back to say, well, there's Farm Bureau members to offset the 5 that don't want it. We have 50 who do that. That wouldn't have any legal, there wouldn't be any legal effect to that at all. But it is a significant impact, obviously, as Bruce pointed out, the vast majority of people want it, whether they're in farm or never been on a farm. But yeah, no, there wouldn't be an illegal effect of offsetting Farm Bureau membership saying any more than, well, I guess, yeah, that their membership, that's how they help. That's the standing issue for them. It's not a legally determinative issue on our side.
Then how does an organization, without identifying a specific plaintiff, have standing?
No, they have to. They'd have to say one of our members. Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's legally operative for them to have standing, but it wouldn't be a basis for them to prevail in the end.
But are they gonna have to go find somebody because they as an organization can't argue? Or are they trying to argue that as an organization they've been hurt?
They have suggested they will argue that as an organization they have standing. We have indicated that we will challenge that assertion of standing and require them to put forth actual members.
I mean, because it doesn't matter whether it's you can Farm Bureau out, call it Sierra Club or some other group. I mean, don't they have to actually have a plaintiff before they get to have?
We agree with you, yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, is there any other questions on that one? Okay, are we going to the next,
Number 2, in the quarterly federal lease sale issue, we have a status hearing coming up February 9th. with Judge Trainer. And he has ordered Samantha Ironshirt to be present. So we're preparing questions to our Special Assistant Attorney General that he can ask. He's supposed to submit written questions in advance so she can be prepared to answer those to the court, but also follow-up questions. So we're looking at the December lease sale, which is going to happen, I think, here in about 5 days. They started with 35 tracks and for a variety of reasons, reduced that down to 12 parcels that they're going to actually auction. And the only indication on all but one of them is that it was at state director discretion to take them off the list. So we'll have lots of questions for Samantha about how they arrive at that and how they got to that decision. We think we know, but we want to get it on the record.
And her role is state director?
Yeah, she's the state director. She's supposed to be making these discretionary decisions.
For North Dakota?
Yes.
Do they have 50 different state directors, or do they have, some state directors have responsibility?
So we're Montana Dakotas, so she's actually state director over 3 states.
Okay.
So it's not, yeah. And we think we know what's going on with these parcels, but we'll find out when we examine Samantha on the 9th of February. We'll let you know.
So they were ordered by a federal court to hold the lease sales that hadn't been held since Biden took office.
Correct.
And then they started doing them, but they're doing them in an extremely limited way by excluding ones that have been nominated.
Correct. So they're excluding, we've got 800 parcels that have been nominated, and they're using some kind of mysterious process to exclude parcels from the auctions. So, for example, we don't know how they chose the 35 to start with, but it's very unclear how they got from 35 down to 12. I think we know, but we'll ask a lot of questions and see if we can point out to Judge Trainer that it's not a process designed to lease lands. It's a process designed to prevent the leasing of lands. Any other questions?
And you said February 9th?
February 9th. Yep. It's not right
So
around the corner.
So part of it is they're achieving their objectives of not leasing by just slow rolling everything.
Correct. So you have to ask, 2 of the parcels that I've identified that the state director used for direction to take off the auction list actually have producing wells with communitization agreements on that spacing unit. And yet the federal minerals that are included in that CA and are receiving revenue from those producing wells are not being auctioned at state director discretion.
So the goal is to try to increase the US deficit by stopping revenue from flowing into the United States of America. Is that
It appears you're absolutely correct, Governor. It's a real head scratcher.
Well, because it can't be environmentally driven, because when you stop US production, it gets filled by foreign production, which is not produced as cleanly. So there must be, if it's we don't want to solve the deficit problem and we don't want to help the environment, then it'd be good to ask some questions on what problem they are trying to solve.
What are they trying to solve?
We actually lower federal income taxes too, because when you stop both the mineral owners and the oil companies from successfully developing a legal product, then it also reduces federal treasury revenue on that side too.
So in the most recent reporting year, and the U.S. Forest Service told us this last week, that Dakota Prairie Grasslands produced $352 million in royalty revenue.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
For the federal government.
They get half of it, half comes back to the state, and then half of that goes to the counties. So yeah, they're trying to reduce that and dampen it down. And like I said, you've got two spacing units, each could have potentially 15 wells in them. They have one well and unleased federal minerals that can't be penetrated because the minerals are not leased. They
Even
can
though they're-
participate in the revenue.
Even though there's an existing well there, is it in a position where it's draining from federal minerals?
It
Because if
is.
that's true, then I understand it's not leased, but
So we challenged them on that and, occasionally now, neither one of these did they state that these are in a drainage analysis. They did on one parcel from the September sale. And they told us that it takes 6 or 7 years for them to complete a drainage determination. Which we're also questioning and challenging with Judge Trainer.
they need more competent staff. It isn't that hard.
It's more a matter of want to.
How long would it take your team to do the same thing?
A week, probably. We talked about them when we were talking about orders. Yeah, I mean, it's not difficult if you have producing wells in the spacing unit, your minerals are being drained because it's been drilled and hydraulically fractured and.
Sir, of the 35, which is again arbitrarily mysteriously small and then goes down to 12, are any of those have a surface pad on federal? Because a lot of the federal minerals being developed in North Dakota do not have any disruption whatsoever.
That's right. I don't know the answer to that, Governor. I'll
it
look
would
at that. Yeah.
Because I think the perception is that somehow if you're doing oil development on federal land, you're somehow ruining, quote, ruining the land, and no one has got an understanding of how small our pads are relative to the size of these, and especially now with a 3 mile, and the pads are getting smaller and the
wells are getting longer.
Yeah, and the units are getting larger. And so as a percentage, you're actually gaining efficiency through innovation where you've got less and less disruption. But I think people feel that they just the words around oil development or drilling on federal land sounds like you're punching holes in federal land as opposed to just, putting mailbox money back to the federal government, and it's untouched, literally untouched.
Correct.
You know what's sad about it? Most of the time they're pushing, most of the time, they're pushing that off to private land, and it may not even be the best location to actually set the pad and do the drilling.
Right. They want the pad on private or state land.
Yep.
But it'd be interesting if we could think about submitting, these are platforms for communication whenever you've got a federal trial, but submitting photographs of federal land where the mineral development's gone on, that it's like, here's what it looked like before, here's what it looks like after, and it's the same photo because nobody has walked or touched the land to do it, and here's the size of the check that came from it. It's like, if there was ever free money for a country that needed one, it'd be this.
It's very clearly an anti-fossil fuel agenda. And, that's what we're fighting against, but.
It's actually becoming an anti-liquid fuel agenda because they're against ethanol and biodiesel too.
Correct. Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lynn.
Federal regulatory side then, BLM Resource Management Plan, I believe we have an MOU that we've signed. And so we haven't started those conversations. I guess maybe we've started them. We had introductions. That's as far as we've gotten. We know who the players are, but we'll start moving forward in a serious way here after the holidays on that MOU. So that makes us a cooperating agency. It actually makes a group of state agencies a cooperating agency with the BLM on that. So, and that's the approach we're trying to take, is an all of state government approach, which seemed pretty overwhelming to the Forest Service last week when we met with them on their travel management plan and filled the room with state agency directors. So that was encouraging. And they're definitely working with us, but that's the status on the resource management plan. On the EPA methane rules, as you know, they issued a final rule that is very problematic for the state of North Dakota. So Sean Wrighton is working with Dave Glott and myself and Paul Seavey to put together a plan to either find another state to partner with or to litigate the final rule to make that decision. From an oil and gas standpoint, the harm is that we've got 1,383 wells that have no access to gas sales pipelines, and they produce 45,000 barrels a day. And 2 years from now, they either have to find a way to market their gas or shut the wells in. And we've got 1,438 marginal wells that produce 12,000 barrels a day and support 1,400 jobs that are going to be pushed into the same LDAR requirements as offshore wells or any other wells. So and then the final or the second big concern is the super emitter program, where third parties can go out and look at North Dakota sites and bypass DEQ and report directly to the EPA, which is a violation of our agreement with them on primacy for the state on Quad O. So we got a very strong legal argument here. We got to evaluate how we want to pursue it. But basically at stake for North Dakota is 2 years from now, we lose 2,800 jobs, about 3,000 wells, the production from 3,000 wells and 57,000 barrels of oil a day.
That's a minimum, because when you're basically mobilizing anti-fossil fuel groups and turning them all into sort of a regulatory posse, then that's, I want to say largely un-American, but it's, it sort of expands the regulatory environment to everybody. You could have all kinds of folks that are sort of funding anti-fossil fuels, could fund armies of citizen regulators that are actually paid by these groups as opposed to working for regulatory. So what would the regulatory regime be? Because you could be getting attacked and monitored by anybody at any time. It's like basically creating an army and really try to finish off what they're starting to do through the federal agencies.
Yeah, and I haven't seen the numbers for 2023, but I saw the numbers for 2022. The pro oil and gas NGOs raised 1.5 billion in contributions and dues. The anti-oil and gas NGOs raised 4.5 billion.
Jeez.
So it's a 3 to 1. And so that's a huge concern because, like I said, they bypass our primacy and report directly to EPA Region 8 or EPA headquarters. The other interesting fact
is bypassing Congress also.
Well, yes, sir.
All of this, it's
yeah. Don't appear to be taking any action. EPA just recently surveyed the state. I believe they did right at 800 sites, Glott told me. They found just under 99% compliance, so a little over 1% non-compliance, and they were upset about that. Yeah, I think they found 8 flares that weren't lit or something like that on some marginal wells. So yeah, we got a serious problem, but we're going to have to push back as hard as we can. Hopefully we'll find good partners in this. And
unfortunately, that's getting to be the norm. When you have compliance, there are people out there that are not happy about that.
Correct.
I see it through some of our programs.
And, I just saw an article today where the New Mexico legislature is preparing for, they believe in this phase out of oil and gas. And so they're preparing for their budgets to decline rapidly. as oil and gas is phased out. So it's pretty amazing. They would not be a good partner in this fight.
Is there an opportunity, I mean, on the methane rules to get agriculture involved?
They are targeting us.
Yes.
They're putting up a lot of grants and programs to try and offset that, keep us distracted. But, you know, some of the digesters and animal agriculture is becoming a little bit of a target, but they keep telling us, no, no, no. But it goes back to my earlier comment, the more this has been studied, it's a problem and there's a double standard because we have all these wetlands, all these marshes that create a ton of methane. And yet we have no policy in place to deal with that, but we can target everybody else and everything else in the North American continent.
Every cow, every flare.
Yep. Don't touch our wetlands or potholes or marshes.
We simply have to take an all of state government approach to fight back.
Yep.
And I do know, based on our meetings with the Alaska legislators that were down here to talk carbon storage, that they want to partner with us in whatever way they can. They've got funding and they're eager to partner with us. So they're a big states' rights state, as you might guess.
And to the governor's comment or question, we certainly recognize that production agriculture is a large user of energy to maintain food security. So I see more and more states and ag commissioners, my colleagues, jumping on board when it comes to energy security. I recognize it more as the ones that get hurt in their communities, those that are underserved, economically and socially disadvantaged. No one seems to be caring about them, but they want to impose more regulations, penalties, and harm on the energy sector, which they forget what it does to the rest of the economy and society.
We were successful on the previous methane rules under the Obama administration of getting that, winning all the way up to the DC Circuit. I think we're in DC Circuit right now in an appeal on that. So, again, we've got a good district, a good circuit, and so we just need to push back hard, in my opinion.
But I just want to, the commissioner's point on who gets hurt. I mean, the people who get hurt the most when you have high food costs and high energy costs are low income people that are trying to put food on the table and gas in the car, and they have food, gas in the car to commute because they often can't live close to where they have to work. And so it's inversely hurts hurts those folks the most. And those are not the folks they're not going to go out and, buy a Tesla, even if you get $7,500 off on your rebate. So they can't afford that, right? I mean, if they can afford a car, they're buying a used car.
Yeah.
One of the interesting points in the rule is that they used a global cost of carbon to justify the rule. So we challenge that as well. Not only the number, but how they come about and what that even means. All right, boy, Debbie down. BLM venting and flaring, we're expecting that rule to roll out first quarter.
I just want to say one more thing, but I mean, when you announce these things at COP overseas, and that's when you roll it out to try to impress the whole world about how, sort of, what do you call it? Your value signaling or your,
Virtue signaling.
What's that?
Virtue signaling.
Virtue signaling. You're virtue signaling like we care about the environment. We're going to announce this stuff there. And it's just, each one of those things has got an enormous cost back here in the economy and jobs and people. and it undermines our national security. And then they're bragging about it over there. And no one actually, to get someone to actually point that out today in the current media is just impossible.
It is. Yeah, we really do need a media program. Our federal government's failing us. As North Dakota citizens, they're absolutely failing us.
Got Mary here today.
All right.
But it does highlight actually this how critically important your local media is. It's like no one's going to tell this story at the national level. They're just not going to discuss it because we don't matter to them at the end of the day. And they aren't going to take the time to sit down and talk with policymakers and the people who understand this, the energy industry and others, and get those stories. If you don't have the local media, which seems like it's dying all over the country.
Yeah, we were delighted that our comments about the number of wells and jobs and barrels showed up in the Fargo Forum and the Bismarck Tribune.
Right.
That's great.
It is
Good work,
great.
guys.
It's the only hope that we have. People who are proximate to information can actually ask people about it, get the actual facts, and put it out there.
We got to find a way to get it on social media. That's where the people are that are rejoicing over COP
Where the cool
28.
people are, Lynn.
COP 23. I'm sorry?
That's where the cool people are.
I know.
We're not the cool people. We've got to get it out there.
So DOJ has indicated to us that they're dropping the appeal on the previous BLM venting and flaring rule so that this one can come out first quarter. So we'll be watching for it. It'll come out for comment and we'll take the same approach, I hope. It'll probably just involve us and DEQ, but it probably should involve trust lands and, kind of everybody in North Dakota gets impacted by this stuff.
Absolutely.
And then the last one is DAPL, DEIS. Mr. Wright.
Guys, good afternoon. Not a whole lot to report since we've obviously submitted the comments last week, Wednesday. Appreciate all the work from, both of your offices as well, commissioners, specifically, Dutch, Lynn, Todd was involved in it, and the whole statewide crew. So really appreciate all the work. Comments were submitted on Wednesday. So next step is to wait and hear kind of how those are incorporated and for a final decision. The earliest we would hear about that is May of next year, but that could be pushed off till later. So, we'll still continue to have conversations with the Corps, but the big work and the big lift was completed last week, and I think we have a really good product. So appreciate all the support from all your teams.
Yeah, thank you, John. Any questions for John? I want to thank everybody as well. How many different agencies did you have involved?
About 15. So.
In the final, that was about 40 pages.
Yeah, the actual comments were about 36 to 40 with 150 additional pages.
And I would say for those that if they haven't, the cover letter that we put on top of it was, I think the comments were all sort of straight line. Here's your rule and here's our comments. The cover letter I put on there and just said what I've been saying out loud, which is this is absurd. I mean, why are we reviewing, this crossing out of, 18,000 crossings in the country? Why are we doing that when there's no possible environmental issue with it 93 feet below the bottom of the river and it's operating safely? And so this is, if it's not that, and then if you somehow economically shut it down or say you got to build a new one at a different location, you can't do a different crossing that's safer than the one we have that's in an existing corridor. And so then you're left with the only conclusion, it's completely political. And so then what is the politics? Because once again, if in this case, if you shut it down, it would not reduce demand. So it would just reduce the ease of supply. The cost would go up. Some of it would shift to rail. Some of it might shift to foreign suppliers. So it was by rail or by truck less safe than by pipeline. And it doesn't help the environment. So it's back to the question of what problem you're trying to solve, because shutting this thing down doesn't do anything for the environment, but it actually does harm to every North Dakota citizen, including every member of every enrolled tribe in our state, because everybody benefits. So we said that in the cover letter. And I ended up with the word absurd or bizarre, but maybe both, but it was, I mean, it was just like, this is like, how do you provide, we provided legitimate comments, hundreds of pages of stuff relative to their argument, but you have to ask the questions of like, why in the first place? I mean, why are we even talking about that? So that's what we tried to put on the front, because there isn't, no one from the federal government can provide the answer of why they're doing it, because there isn't a basis for it other than the politics.
Pure politics. There's a letter around from, how many of the state attorneys general put that together? Remember the exact number?
Related to this?
Yeah.
It was 26. It was every other Republican.
Every other Republican said, we didn't join it for obvious reasons. We've got our own submissions here, but why does it stop at the Republican states?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. I mean, they'd say something about it. It's like, it's just Republicans doing that. Yeah. I do maintain a lot of it's not, there aren't local stories. They're all up here and they're all just talking about nice stuff and everything's a tectonic plate as opposed to in the real world where else the governor's talking about and that we're talking about in the submission to the state of North Dakota, which you guys did so much great work shepherding together for everybody. Big difference. So yeah, I mean, like I said, we didn't join in that for obvious reasons. We didn't because our state has our own submissions. We want to make sure you don't want to be off like one half a letter on something and have somebody point that out as a big discrepancy. So, but we appreciated that they were doing that. But it's telling that there aren't any Democrat attorneys general. It's just why?
Serve the people.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous though. It is ridiculous. Those local interests are very much aligned around the country.
Yeah.
Very much aligned.
Absolutely. Anything else, Lynn?
Nothing else. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas.
V&D.
Well, I'll tell you, in order to move things along, you have a guideline that actually doesn't take place until after the first of the year. And if you want to we can talk to it more at the next meeting if you want to. It's totally up to you. It's just a guideline change in regards to some changes we're going to be doing in our student loan portfolio. So if you want to, and then the rest are minutes and we could go right to close because I know you have in the essence of time.
So tell us about the change on the.
Is it very complicated?
No, it has no effect on any students in the state of North Dakota or University of North Dakota. What we are proposing to do is we would not do any, we would cease to do student loans to out-of-state students and to out-of-state universities. So we're just going to concentrate on North Dakota. So, and that'll be effective. We want to roll it out. We'll start communication after the first of the year, and then that'll be effective as of April 1st until all those students.
Does it affect students in our neighboring states?
It does affect students in Minnesota. So it'd be, students, out-of-state students coming to North Dakota, universities and colleges are okay. Any North Dakota residents are okay, but we have a smaller group that does what we would call out-of-state, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Montana, that we have out-of-state schools with out-of-state colleges. And we are, when you look at our losses and some of the things we are experiencing, it's all coming from the out-of-state and out-of-state colleges and out-of-state students.
So if a student from Moorhead comes to NDSU, they can get a loan?
Yes.
If a student from Moorhead goes to University of Wisconsin, no.
Right. They can no longer.
No longer.
Get it.
Yep.
You're not pulling the loans on anybody now, but you're.
Nope, and we'll continue to fund those through, that's why we're waiting till April.
Yep.
We'll notify people, fund them through the end of the year, be very transparent and do that, but we haven't.
But that category is showing up as higher loan losses.
Yes.
If you're a Montana kid going to University of Mary,
Good.
that works. Or somebody from South Dakota going to Jamestown University.
So if you're coming into North Dakota, then you can still get a loan.
Public or private schools.
Yep.
Right. Doesn't
In
matter
North
which.
Dakota.
It's
Yep.
just- Yeah, it's just if you're what we call out of state. So if I'm in Minnesota and I'm going to school in Minnesota, then we won't be doing the loan.
It's a little 4-box matrix you can just put in your
Yeah.
communication. And
Exactly.
if you're in that box, you're no longer
Exactly.
eligible.
Big news, no change to students in North Dakota or universities in North
But
Dakota.
if somebody from North Dakota lives in North Dakota, Adams, North Dakota, they're going to Arizona State, they can get a loan.
Yes, because they're a North Dakota resident. Yep.
Gotcha.
Good enough.
Yep.
All
Okay,
right.
and the rest is advisory board committee minutes. That's really all we have for open.
And then we're going to, we'll move to, closed session.
And again, we won't be communicating any of that until later on in the year. We want to process, we got a communication schedule on that student and stuff, so. But I want to give you a heads up, start hearing things before our next meeting.
Sure. When is the effective date, Gene?
April.
So the effective date is April 1st. We're going to start communicating with our out-of-state colleges in January.
Okay. That, under the authority of the North Dakota Century Code 6-09-35, 44-04-18.4, 44-04-19.1, 44-04-19.2. Move that the industrial commission enter into executive session for the purpose of Bank of North Dakota confidential business and for attorney consultation.
Second. We have a motion, and a second, moved into confidential session, executive session. We'll call for the vote.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General,
Yes.
Governor,
Yes. Motion carries. Commission will now be meeting in executive session for the B&D business pursuant to NDCC 6-09-35 to consider the items listed on the agenda under B&D confidential business. Only commission members, their staff, commission staff, and B&D staff will participate in the executive session. After the B&D executive session, commission will meet in executive session for attorney consultation. Only commission members, their staff, and commission staff will participate. Any formal action taken by the commission will occur after it reconvenes in open. I remind the commission members that are present in the executive session that discussions must be limited to the announced purposes for those two separate executive sessions, which is anticipated in a combined way to last approximately 45 minutes. The executive session will begin now at 4:12. We all set to go? Okay, executive session is just now at 4:59 PM, and the commission is reconvened in open session. During the Bank of North Dakota executive session, the commission made a motion related to loan application. Please call the roll on the bank motion.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Attorney General,
Yes.
Governor,
Yes, motion carries. During our attorney consultation with the NDIC, the commission consulted, provided guidance to its attorneys and to the NDIC leadership regarding the item that was listed on the agenda. That action item is being taken by that group, but there was no formal action taken inside that session, and there's no vote that needs to be taken. Now, that concludes our business for today. I want to thank the Industrial Commission and your staff, and the staff, everybody that's in the from the commissioner's offices and Ag and Attorney General and the governor's office. It's been a really great year. We've moved the ball forward through a number of important initiatives. NDIC continues to play a super important role in central to the economy and touches every citizen in the state of North Dakota. So thank you all, and Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas.